Welcome everybody to the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. Welcome to Paul Ricard. We are 1 minute away from getting the GT Cup qualifying race 1 underway. Apologies for joining coverage a little bit later on in the day than planned. It's been a day of technical challenges, but the good news is we are just about to go racing. David Addison and John Watson trackside. It's our first look at GT cars this year, John, bearing not sponsors logos but the national flags. It gives us a really interesting entry, and this is going to be a fascinating 60-minute race.
Very exciting indeed, because we were looking at nations, as you point out, David, not looking at teams and sponsors and whatever. We've got 1 hour, and remember here at Paul Ricard, as the cars face down towards turn 1, they'll be going into the sun, beginning to drop down behind the mountains that surround this Paul Ricard circuit. There, look at the sun, you can see it, a ball of red, and very shortly that'll be disappearing.
Indeed it will. Now, of course, a lot of this is down to the man behind the wheel, or in other categories, because we've got so many disciplines over the weekend, the lady behind the wheel. There's a gap on the grid where Spain is not to be found. So the car that would have been started by Fernando Navarrete, missing from the grid, will try and find where that car is. It might have just missed the pit lane closing and be trapped at the end of the pit lane. But green flag is waved. The cars make their way then off down towards Verrières, the first sequence of corners on this effectively 5-kilometre long circuit, which always delivers action. And as John has made the point, they are going to be heading into the darkness. Now, of course, as you look at the grid, it's about the nations, but it's a 2-driver race. We'll look at the drivers too. Valentin Pierberg starts on pole position for Germany. For France, Eric Debard is alongside him. For United Kingdom, it's Ian Loggy starting 3rd. And then for Poland, Marcin Jedlinski next ahead of Fernando Navarrete. And then for Puerto Rico, Francesco Piaravenetti. On the 4th row, the Stephen Grove for Australia, and for the Ukraine, there is Yevgen Sokolovsky ahead of number 71, the Lithuanian entry of Imantas Navikauskas. Alongside him for Brazil is Adalberto Baptista. Next up for Switzerland, there is Dexter Müller. For Hong Kong, there is Paul Ed, and completing the grid for Chinese Taipei, there is Max Chen. There are 2 GT categories this weekend. There is the GT Cup, which is this double driver format, 2 qualifying races, points scored for where you finish. So if you win, you get 1 point, 10th, 10 points. You can work it out yourself, and it's the lowest cumulative scores that determine the grid for the main race, and the medals, gold, silver, bronze, are on the main race. There's GT Sprint we'll worry about later in the weekend, which is 1 driver, 1 race, 60 minutes, no pit stop, go for it. But this is, if you like, John, more a traditional format with the 2 drivers.
Yes, the difference is when they do the driver change, there'll be no wheels tires change. That's different to what we're accustomed to. Yeah. So it's going to be really down to who can get in and out and in of their respective teams, nations, cars. Remember, track conditions, ambient, are very close in temperature. Track temperature 24 Celsius, so it's not exactly normal weather at this time of year. Well, maybe earlier in the afternoon it would have been warmer. So everybody has to be that little bit careful when the lights go green, and that run, that charge down into the turn 1, that tight left, then followed by the right to swing down all the way down to turns 3 and 4, the chicane.
And of course, one of the fascinations about this weekend, whether you look at it in Formula 4, touring cars or GT terms, is that because these are people racing for their nation rather than being signed up for a team, you've got a really different looking grid. There are people racing against one another who may not have raced against each other before. Ian Loggy, for example, we are used to seeing in Fanatec GT. He's this year's British GT champion, but around him are lots of people against whom he has never raced, and it's a different dynamic altogether. So it really is going to be an intriguing way to kick off action. We've had free practice sessions and qualifying during the morning here at the Circuit Le Castellet. The karting and auto slalom and drifting and esports areas have been really busy as well. The rally has been taking place day 1 of 2 out in the local roads. And about 2 hours away, the cross car tournament is underway as well. But now it is time to go racing here to kick off the track activity in earnest for the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. We were last at Vallelunga, and now in the sunshine of the south of France, the cars accelerate their way up towards the timing line. If the race director is happy, he will give the indication that the lights can change, and we will go racing. It is going to be Germany versus France on the front row of the grid. We do go racing. They blast away down towards turn 1. For Germany, Valentin Pierberg has the advantage. It's going to be Germany from France, but for the United Kingdom, Ian Loggy gets up the inside and goes 2nd. That was a brave effort. So Germany, United Kingdom, France, that is the top 3, but Pierberg goes out wide. Others scatter their way across the curb on the inside, and in strife already is Poland. That, I'm afraid to say, is Marcin Jedlinski, and Ian Loggy newly crowned British GT champion. He's all over the back of Germany.
Well, being a British GT champion, he's accustomed to having low ambient and circuit temperatures, so maybe that's given him the slight benefit over Valentin Pierberg and the German entrant Mercedes, or German nation Mercedes-Benz. So down at the far end of the Paul Ricard circuit, now they come on to the long Mistral straight, but this time the circuit will run the chicane in the middle of the straight, so they're not going to go flat out all the way down to Seine. They're going to have a big heavy brake into the chicane, another overtaking opportunity on this early opening lap.
So the cars now make their way into that chicane, hard on the brakes, you go left, and then there's a little bit of a straight almost, before you go right in a big slide there.
That's Poland and the Aston Martin. Just got the back end tyres probably not up to temperature, and once the back end started to swing around, he was just a passenger.
So the Aston Martin for Ukraine, in fairness, it is, sorry, yes, who's gone missing. So that car will sort itself out and get back into the race. We did have, I think, Spain start the race, but a long way back on the grid, out of position, as the cars then now come through Seine for the first time. So all 13 are going as they work their way now up towards Le Beausset for the first time. There is Stephen Grove for Australia, sharing with his son Brenton, but Australia then trying to hustle its way back up through the order as the cars now make the run for the first time of asking up through the Virage de la Tour, heading towards the end of the lap. And of course here you've got one or two drivers like Poland, Marcin Jedlinski trying to fight back, but a good opening lap by Germany, and Valentin Pierberg should lead them across the line.
So only in a few seconds time we expect to see that lead German Mercedes come across, take one lap into the record books. Ian Logie challenged very strongly on the opening lap. Great to see that level of commitment on the opening lap. Normally drivers would tend to hand back, but Ian Logie certainly did not.
Yeah, he's a committed driver, is Ian Logie. He has specialised in GT racing over his relatively brief career, but he's done a lot of miles in a short space of time. So Germany leads, the United Kingdom leads France. Battle is on their look because Australia comes under attack and actually loses out, because round the outside goes Lithuania. So that therefore puts now Imantis Navikauskas up one place. So Lithuania goes ahead of Australia, and therefore 8th versus 9th here. Nations battling against nations, different brands as ever. Audi goes ahead of Porsche, but Lithuania ahead of Australia. Germany led at the end of lap one by just over a second. Valentin Pierberg at the wheel.
And then there's a further 0.8 of a second back to third place, France and De Band in his. So it's a Mercedes 1, 2, 3 for Germany, France, and Germany, Great Britain, and France.
So the cars then make their run along the Mistral straight. This is lap number 2. And hard onto the brakes, into the chicane they go. Big effort being made a little bit further back. You see Paul Ip for Hong Kong, China, but Valentin Pierberg for Germany it is that leads the way. Now, I would offer you that he's starting to build that lead over the United Kingdom. Ian Logie second, but not being able to stay with the German entry on this lap. And if anything, the UK may be coming under pressure from France. Eric Debard at the wheel of the French entry. Mercedes, interestingly enough, 1, 2 and 3 at the moment.
Yeah, Ian Logie looked very committed coming through Seine. The car looked to be moving around a little bit more than the lead Germany entry Valentin Pierberg, but there is the second place, Ian Logie behind the wheel, but Valentin Pierberg has got clear air and he's taking advantage of that, pulling away the gap when they came across the line at the end of the lead lap was 1.1 seconds. We'll wait to see how much that's improved, and Eric Debard probably trying to run down that second place Britain entry, so the gaps between the front three were 2 seconds. 1.1 seconds, that's gone up to first to second, waiting for the timing and scoring to update. So that gap is now 2.2 seconds, first to second place, and the gap second to third remains static at 0.8 of a second.
So the race leader goes through Germany, Valentin Pierberg 2 seconds to the good. There in 4th place is Brazil. That is Adalberto Baptista at the wheel of the Brazilian entry. Now he in turn has got Puerto Rico chasing after him. The Puerto Rican entry being driven by Francesco Piovanetti in the opening stint of the race. But right now, as they drop now down towards the chicane, approaching the Virage du Camp, battles are on up and down the order. There in 6th place for the Swiss team, Dexter Müller. Another Mercedes going strongly, but going deep there, almost running too wide. Yeah,
overran coming into turn 5, and then, of course, turn 6, this long right-hand corner, which then eventually is turn 7 onto the main straight, the Mistral straight, divided, as we mentioned, by the chicane midway down. Hopefully this group of cars will see themselves having the opportunity to think about an overtake, as that group of 4 or 5 cars mid-pack. But the gap at the front, Valentin Peerberg for Germany is just, he's up and away, 2.2 seconds. And they came across the line at the start of lap 3. And I would suspect that the pace in Sector 1, Peerberg's got purple Sector 1. That means he's the quickest car in that sector of the entire field. And visually, you can see the gap has increased from where it was 1 lap ago here as they come into scene.
Challenge being made there, look, so this is Poland versus Spain, the recovering Spanish entry that goes way, way wide, the wrong side there, look, of those marker cones, and there are track limit warnings coming from Rui Marquez, the race director here. So Marcin Jedlinski trying to recover after an early spin. Fernando Navarrete trying to recover after being delayed at the start and starting at the back. He's trying to push his way forward. So you've got 2 drivers here for their nations trying to push forward. But they've both now caught Australia, haven't they? So the Australian entry of Stephen Grove is coming under attack. Poland and Spain closing up.
So across start-finish line, we got the lead. 3 cars, 3.9 seconds, the advantage to Peerberg in the German entry Mercedes. Ian Logie in second place. He is only he has lost 0.3 of a second on that last lap to the third place Eric Debar in the French entry.
So the race leaders work their way then over the timing line once more. 3.9 seconds, Germany to the United Kingdom. Now, of course, in all of this, you've got 2 drivers, so it may well be that other cars are quicker in the second stint. Ian Logie, for example, sharing with Sam Neary, not Chris Froggatt, the Team UK captain. He's been taken unwell, so Sam Neary drafted into the car. We know from British GT how quick he is. Valentin Peerberg for Germany will give way to Fabian Schiller. We know how rapid he is as well. The second stint promises to be very interesting indeed, doesn't it? As there, Paul Ip versus the Lithuanian car. That's Hong Kong, China versus Lithuania, 7th and 8th. Now come onto the Mistral.
So this group of cars behind the Hong Kong, China entry, the Honda. Great to see Honda racing back again in Europe. We don't see them as frequently enough as I would like to see. But again, you see GT3 cars, turnkey race cars. The balance of performance is so effective, so efficient, that it's very difficult here, even at Paul Ricard with the introduction of the chicane, to find a way around a competitive car.
Now, the team manager of Brazil is being summoned to the race director immediately. So what has Brazil done? Is this track limit warnings that have already become to an insurmountable number? Let's see. He's got to go to the stewards. It is, no, not track limits per se. It is gaining a position potentially while being off the road. So it's, yes, a kind of track limits issue, but it's not just exceeding them, it's gaining an advantage.
We saw him off the track at turn, I'd seen, but then he came back on track. He didn't overtake there, so somewhere else around the racetrack we didn't have that live on picture, so we don't know where it was. But obviously team manager called immediately in that position, will have to be given back. Look at Spain, look how close they are to the tail of the Audi coming into the penultimate corner. Then the big break for up the inside, trying to find a way around the Australian Porsche, and couldn't quite get the job done.
So over the timing line they come once more, and Navarrete for Spain still pushing on in the background, as there the effort being made on the inside by Hong Kong, China to try to get ahead of Australia. Stays ahead of Australia going down towards Verrières, so Stephen Grove drops a place, hustles his way out of the corner. And there, look, Spain versus Poland, absolutely side by side. And for Spain, Fernando Navarrete lines up on the inside line, goes through, gets up alongside Hong Kong, China as well, but then gets all sideways, scrabbles out wide, just about gets an apex there, going down towards turn 5, forces Poland out wide. Spain gains a place.
Well, Poland, I think, did it self-inflicted, that move to move the outside, just got the wrong part of the corner on the entry. The car just had no grip whatsoever. But these 3 cars are really sort of scrabbling amongst themselves, and a lot of little minor errors creeping in under the pressure. Now the Poland Audi comes back at the Mercedes, looking to go the long way around, coming down. He's got the straight line performance. Will he be able to maintain that under? He has. Good pass by the Poland, then clipped at the back. Oh dear me, bodywork comes flying off the rear of the Audi. Yeah, you can see the damage to that left rear corner.
It's a little bit like we saw in a Fanatec GT race in Barcelona without the sort of end plates over the back of the car. But right now, that's damage incurred then for the Polish entry of Marcin Jedlinski. That means Fernando Navarrete, who was ahead, has got to do it all over again as well. and there might be a bit of finger wagging about that, but with the lights are flashing, the pair of them bearing down here, Poland and Spain, onto Hong Kong, China. Paul Ip in the Honda goes a little bit wide and then comes across and gets the apex and gets turned around. Hong Kong, China spins, Poland involved in that as well. More bodywork flies.
The bodywork from the Audi in two separate corners. There is the Honda, not quite beached, sitting there trying to get it reset, get it back into gear. You can see that little shudder in the car as first gear was engaged, and there is the Poland Audi all of a sudden all on its own, but with damaged bodywork, particularly on that left rear corner.
So it's been a lively first 10 minutes, hasn't it? Let's see what else the race has got in store for us. Germany leads the United Kingdom, leads France as they come over the line. There is Brazil 4th, Puerto Rico 5th, and Switzerland is 6th. In 7th place now, it is Lithuania. In 8th place, it's Australia. There they are. 9th is Spain, and in the top 10 just is Poland with a slightly dog-eared car. 11th is the Ukraine, 12th is Hong Kong, China, and 13th is Chinese Taipei.
There is our race leader. Look at the gap. It's a visual gap, not just a start out on the timing and scoring. It was coming across the line over 7 seconds. Ian Logie in second place in the British entry, followed by Franz-Eric Debad in his car. These three, certainly second and third, are more or less the gap between them as it has been more or less since the race got underway. But Valentin Peerberg in the German Mercedes entry, he is up and gone. Still that 7-second advantage over second place Ian Logie.
Just wonder whether France could do much about the United Kingdom. Eric Debard for France. He will give that car over in the second stint to Simon Gachet. Now, Gachet, we know, is demon quick, whether it's GT3 or GT4. So that French entry is going to be really interesting. But Fabian Schiller for Germany to take over the leading car, he doesn't lack anything in terms of speed either. Absolutely not.
Fabian Schiller, I'm sure when he gets behind the wheel of the German entry, will be capable of not only consolidating the lead that this car, or we think the number 20 Mercedes, will have when it comes to do the driver handover, but he could extend it.
So the gap has come down between the United Kingdom and France for second and third places. Ian Logie driving a car he's raced against, the Sky Tempesta liveried car, which has been in British GT as well as Fanatec GT this year. For France then, the Acodis ASP run car of Eric Debard, again closing up a little bit as they come into the Virage Dupont. I love that new angle, looking down on the corner, and here they come now onto the pit straight.
Gap has closed. Certainly indeed. Visually it's closed as they come across start-finish line. And on that last lap, Valentin Peerberg yet again accorded fastest single lap of the circuit.
So the second and third fight goes into turn one. United Kingdom still clear of France, but only just as we nudge towards that pit window. And Ian Logie will want to give way to Sam Neary to see what he can do. Let's catch up on earlier dramas. This was Spain on Poland. So Poland getting a little tap in the tail. The car got all squirrely, but Marcin Jedlinski managed to save that. And Fernando Navarrete came up to have another go on the way through Senior. But this was Hong Kong, China. Paul Ip ran wide, didn't he? And then came across for the apex. And really, there was nowhere that Poland could go.
No, the contact was made just in the exit of the set. And then once the two cars collided, the Honda was the one that suffered greatly from the contact.
So this is the fight for second place. This is the UK versus France. And right now, Ian Logie hanging on to that second place. British GT champion ahead of Eric Debard then for France as they come into and out of the chicane. Eric Debard, who has been French GT champion, although that was way, way back in 2009. But he's done many a mile since then. But we don't see that much of him these days in GT3 machinery.
Gap second to third, just around that half a second. The gap first to second, up to 9.1 seconds. So this battle for second place really is the focal point in the lead trio of German, Britain and France Mercedes. And then for fourth place again, the Brazil number 44 entry, likewise, and the Mercedes AMG GT3.
Eric Debard for France, closing up just a little bit further as they come out of the Virage de la Tour, down towards the Virage Dupont, and the margin at the start of the lap was only half a second between them. Look how much curb Debard uses now. That's local knowledge of the circuit, isn't it?
Absolutely. Ian Logie's doing everything correctly by staying on the black stuff, but Eric Debard has got two wheels well and truly over the curb. Now, Eric Debard's entitled to do that. He's not exceeding track limits, but he's using the limits of the circuit to his advantage, and that's partly the reason why he's closed that gap down fractionally from just under, well, half a second now to just under half a second.
Fernando Navarrete then, a very experienced Spanish touring car and GT racer. We've seen him in the as it then was, Blancpain Endurance Series. He represented Spain in those motorsport games at Vallelunga. And this year he's been racing GT4 and in the International GT Open Series, and that Spanish entry clawing back the time lost from its grid position. Now here is the fight going on between Switzerland and Lithuania. So Switzerland's entry of Dexter Muller, who's raced in the GT3 class of the Le Mans Cup this season. He is fending off the Lithuanian entry, and Imantis Navikauskas, TCR racer more normally, he's getting ever more committed. So too is Spain's Navarrete on the back of Australia's Stephen Grove.
It'd be interesting, there's a little battle going on between the Mercedes and the Audi, because the Lithuanian Audi looks to me is very handily being driven indeed, and will be very quickly, if not on the tail of Mercedes, will be very close to overtake.
Now, Paul Ip, after his spin for Hong Kong, China, down at the foot of the field, but his lap times are pretty good, so he's catching back up to Chinese Taipei's Max Chen. This battle pack you can see now is 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. There's also been a change for 4th place. Puerto Rico is up ahead of Brazil in a good South American battle. Australia fending off Spain here. Porsche fending off Mercedes, Stephen Grove fending off Fernando Navarrete, but we know that Navarrete is in feisty form. He gets his elbows out and he might well come and have a go at Australia soon.
Absolutely. There you can see how close he is to the back of the Australian entered Porsche. Spain all over the back, thinking about making a dive down into the Busette, but it's not possible. Australia closes off that opportunity, but slightly compromises. Ferrari has gotten ahead there. We didn't see the overtake, but now we've got one car in up the inside. No, he can't quite do it. The Ferrari, the Puerto Rican Ferrari, has split the top 4 Mercedes, so that's a good performance indeed from Pavarotti.
Ian Loggy is being given a driving standards flag for track limits, and 1 or 2 others are as well, in fairness. The race leader is currently on lap number 9, and there, Spain, Navarrete comes out of the Virage Dupont, and he's still not quite cleared Australia. So Australia is still hanging on to 8th place, Spain is 9th, Poland is 10th, but the second stint is going to be really interesting to see who rises and falls, and this Puerto Rico-Brazil battle rages on for 4th place still.
Yeah, interesting that the Puerto Rico entry has made progress, whereas the Brazilian entry made, I think, an early move up to 4th place, had that 4th place pretty much covered until Puerto Rico arrived on the scene in the Ferrari and took it away from Brazil.
The incident between Poland and Hong Kong, China was being looked at, but the stewards have said actually no investigation is necessary. It was just a racing incident. Now look at this, they're all concertinaing here. So you've got Spain on the back of Australia, on the back of Lithuania, and Switzerland heading this battle pack in 6th place. But Mercedes from Audi, from Porsche, from Mercedes, they are all very close indeed.
Yeah, the 19 Mercedes ran wide through turn 7. So that lost a little bit of ground. That was Navarrete, the Spanish entrant Mercedes. But look how close he is on the tail of Stephen Grove and the Australia Porsche down. Looks to go down the inside. Not close enough to make it stick. Unless Stephen Grove gets out of the throttle, but it's almost going to be side by side on the entry of the chicane. But Navarrete had to back out of it, otherwise maybe contact would have occurred.
And the last thing you need in these races are further penalties. Remember, your position is the number of points you score. So it's 1 point if you win, 2 if you're second, and so on. And the grid for the main race, the medals race, is going to be based on the cumulative points, with obviously the fewest being pole position. Spain to the inside of Australia, through Le Beausset they go. Fernando Navarrete gains a place, good move.
And Stephen Grove saw it coming. He didn't try to defend because that would, again, would have led to contact, so he gave up the position. Maybe he feels other parts of the racetrack I can come back at the Spanish entered Mercedes, but one has to feel the pace that we're now seeing from Navarrete is he's only going to close down on the Audi, and you can see even coming into turn 14 under brakes, slightly later under brakes than Jelinski. So on to start finish straight as we go on to lap 10.
And we are only really about 5 minutes or so away from that pit window opening as well, as the leaders boom past the pits once more. The lead gap is already 13 seconds. Germany has done an outstanding stint courtesy of Valentin Pierberg here, but Fernando Navarrete, you've got to take your hat off to as well, because the Spanish entry, whoops, big lose. Lithuania spins ahead of him. Around goes then Navikauskas. Everybody just about avoids him. And that was all self-induced, wasn't it? Navikauskas just made a mistake.
Yeah, coming through turn 2, just too early on the throttle. Lost traction at the rear and was unable, just once the pendulum effect took over. So that was the end of that. Back end, just too much throttle. very good avoiding action from the Mercedes, having to go wide round that marker cone. You're not normally permitted to do that without penalties, and he had to do it. That was force majeure, and continues on his way.
Yeah, it was a big avoidance by Spain, by Fernando Navarrete. So that's going to shuffle the order as well. Now, what about second and third? It's still UK versus France. It's still Ian Loggy just ahead of Eric Dabard. It's still Mercedes from Mercedes. But Ian Loggy then has not been able to stay with Germany. Of course, Valentin Pierberg is somebody he has shared a car with in Fanatec GT. But right now, Valentin Pierberg has been able to escape up the road.
Yes, he's escaped by 12.9 seconds at the end of the last lap. There we see the gap between second and third. And on lap 7 and 8, you could see that Eric Dabard took, well, a fraction of a second out on lap 7, a tenth of a second out on lap 8. Lap 9, they were sort of neutralised, so that's why the gap is more or less hovering around about half a second. But again, Eric Dabard, look how he uses the curbing on the inside, coming into turn 14. In Loggy now going to the right of the circuit to defend in the Village du Pont, the exit onto start, finish straight. They're going to come across the line. The time was 4.49 of a second. So it's going to be somewhere in that region as they come across and go on. It's now just under 3/10.
But all the while, as the UK and France fight here, the leading German entry is 14 seconds up the road. Now, this is the gap to third to fourth, because here comes Puerto Rico. It is the Ferrari then. So there, heading towards us, is Francesco Piovanetti, and then behind is Brazil, staying in touch. Then the Brazilian entry, that car being driven by Adalberto Baptista, and Spain still looking for ground. Fernando Navarrete has been one of the stars of this opening stint for Spain. He's up with Switzerland.
I mean, he is very feisty in the manner in which he's using the car, looking for opportunities, trying to force drivers to go, oh, here's Spain coming. He looks like he might be charging down the inside, but he's just trying to get into the head of the car that he's pursuing. There's Muller in the Swiss car, and again Navarrete all over the back now, trying to make the undercut coming through turn 4, then 5, then through turn 6. This long right-hander, and again up the inside, trying, but he may be better placed coming through turn 7 onto the beginning of the Mistral straight, but runs wide, has to run around the curb, and he's got to get that one back. That is for sure.
Yeah.
That will have to be an overtake that will be returned back to the Swiss Mercedes, otherwise he'll be in trouble.
Well, Navarrete's already got a track limit warning for turn 15, the end of the lap. He has not yet decided to cede the place, has he, back to Switzerland, but Dexter Muller will be right there behind him. Stephen Grove for Australia next in the queue. So yes, the message ought to get through really to Spanish driver Fernando Navarrete to give back the place, but he's not suggesting at the moment that he's going to do that.
No, I think he's going to wait and see how long he can get away with it, but certainly he will have to give that position back. That was as clear as day, you could say, well, or clear as evening as it is now here at Paul Ricard. And I mean, he's been great to watch.
Yeah.
Very, let's say, combative rather than aggressive. But he's going to have to give that position up, otherwise he'll receive a penalty.
And he just has a 5-second penalty for Spain for exceeding track limits. That's on the totting up process rather than that one move. But there is a 5-second penalty being given to Spain, to Fernando Navarrete, for persistent track limit offences. Now, I would offer you, John, we are about a lap away from the pit window opening.
You probably are right, because it's going to open after 25 minutes. So there is the car that's received that 5-second time penalty for track limits. And what's happening here? 54 has been spun around, coming on to start, finish straight. We didn't catch it actually as it happened. We just saw the consequence of it. Oh dear, I mean, you'd have thought that would calm down by this stage. They're already 25 minutes or so. There is the Swiss team ready for its driver change.
Now let's try and piece together what happened at the Virage du Pont. The leaders have gone by. The pit window beckons. There is Dexter Muller going through. Now let's have a look. So Switzerland versus Australia. And Stephen Grove for Australia lines up to have a go. There was a gap when he started, and then...
Well, in reality, there was a half a gap, but it wasn't a whole gap. And I suspect Stephen Grove might be penalised for that incident. That was more than one might call a racing incident, but that's up to the stewards and the race director to determine whether there will be any time penalty or any penalty applied whatsoever. As Valentin Pierberg driving serenely with a 15.5-second advantage over the second place Britain in Loggy behind the wheel, France in third still. Well, they've actually, that gap second to third has fractionally increased in favour of Great Britain, but Eric Dabard is still pushing as hard as he can, as there is our race leader Valentin Pierberg. Now, is he going to be the first stopper? He's just coming through that sequence of corners coming up to the penultimate corner. Is he going to be in?
He is. He was the wrong side of the line. So
there he is.
Down the pit lane. So yeah, put Fabian Schiller into that car at the first opportunity.
I think Valentin Pierberg's done an outstanding job.
Yeah, I agree.
So putting in Fabian Schiller can only maybe add further performance, because we know how quick Fabian Schiller is every time he gets into a Mercedes AMG GT3. And in fact, second place has also come in, and third place. So front three cars all into the pit lane at the same time.
So now the driver changes cycle through there for Germany. Fabian Schiller already into the car. Valentin Pierberg helps with the belts. And there is Sam Neary. Now, Sam is a very, very quick driver. If you watch British GT, you'll know just how committed and determined a driver he can be. And the fact that he doesn't have ASN overalls is because he was a bit of a late booking for this. And we wish Chris Froggatt well. He's, as I say, been taken poorly, so get well soon, Chris. He was the UK captain as well, but he can't race. There, the driver change. Simon Gachet ready to jump on board for Eric Debard. So 3 quick, feisty drivers into the second stint. This is going to be another one to savour, isn't it?
It is. I'm just watching the timing, the pit stop time in, driver change out. And we're just around about a minute for the number 20. It's just over a minute now for the number 20, the German entered Mercedes. So going over 65, 66 is going to be, well, waiting for that time to 67.5 seconds for the number 20. It is back out on track. So 67.5 seconds will be the time to beat for the second place Great Britain and for the third place France entry, to see if they can claw back time in that pit stop. So France has already gone over that 1 minute and 7 seconds, and they've lost more time. We're waiting for the Great Britain entry to see how quickly that's going to be. 1 minute 6. So they've picked up a fraction of a second on the number 20 German entry. So they've had the best pit stop of the top 3 so far. France has had the poorest driver change pit stop.
And the fastest lap thus far of the race to Valentin Pierberg, no surprise, at 2 minutes 5, but I reckon that Fabian Schiller will go quicker. And look, I think just about everybody has been in on that same lap, because the mass exodus of cars continues. Switzerland rejoins, Poland rejoins. There it is. And there is Spain's Fernando Navarrete. Remember, that time penalty was given to him. Now that car stayed out. That's about the only, or one of a very, very tiny number that stayed out. So that leads on the track.
If I was the Spain team manager, knowing how quick our man is behind the wheel of the 19 Mercedes AMG GT3, he's got a clear track. I would keep him out, allow him to stay out now till the point when you've got to come in that last few seconds before the track, the pit stop entry closes, and see if he can claw back some of the time he's lost with that 5-second penalty. And, well, you never know, it might be the best move that Spain can make.
So that car will have to serve the 5 seconds on its pit stop, as there a big, big dive up the inside. Poland versus Australia, and through on the inside line goes Karol Bash for Poland. Now, if you follow Lamborghini Super Trofeo or Italian GT, you'll know how quick the Polish driver is, Karol Bash. He's going to be another absolute gun in that car.
Absolutely. There's the car that's got the damage around the left rear quarter and a little bit at the front. But in the meantime, we were talking about Simon Gachet, how quick he is when he's out on his opening sector 1. He's just gone quickest of all throughout this race now that we've got 31 minutes remaining. So Simon Gachet, unsurprisingly, doing what we know he's capable of doing, even quicker than Fabian Schiller, who we think is another hot rod when it comes to doing Mercedes AMG GT3 drives.
Australia being summoned to see the stewards. That must be for that incident down at the Virage Dupont against Switzerland. Simon Gachet lighting up the timing screen. But right now, Spain leads, but yet to serve a pit stop. It's the only nation that hasn't yet pitted, so that owes us a stop. And here you can see the battle going on further back between Marchi Li, who's taken over for Hong Kong, China. And he's closing up onto the tail now of the traffic as he tries to hustle that car back into the mix after time was lost early on. So Evan Chen for Chinese Taipei is the first target. And let's see whether that's going to be a change between the two. So Hong Kong, China versus Chinese Taipei. Marchi Li, another very, very experienced racer.
We're seeing purple sector times popping up since this driver change has taken place. It's been Simon Gachet. We've seen it all through Sam Neary, likewise in the British entry. Fabian Schiller has done so. But Karol Betts equally in sector 3 on his first flying lap. Fastest overall in that final sector.
So Chinese Taipei versus Hong Kong, China together as they come across the line. And Marchi Li for Hong Kong, China in the Honda, the recovering Honda. He's dropped a place. against Chinese Taipei, but he definitely wants to make it back up. Lost it on the pit stops, crawling all over the back of Evan Chen. Now, Evan is another very, very handy racer from Lamborghini Super Trofeo days, for example, so don't rule him out of being able to hang on to this place.
And the Honda looks at the minute, the hands of Marseille, to be capable of running a little bit quicker than the Ferrari directly ahead, but down into this chicane at the far end of the racetrack. Then you line it up, get your braking right, try not to overdrive on the entry into turn 5. Careful on the exit not to run track limit abuse, then into turn, this long turn 6. Keeps going, then you straighten up momentarily, then the cut back through turn 7, back onto the Mistral straight.
You're riding with Hong Kong, China. You're riding with Marchi Li then in the Honda NSX Evo as they blast along the Mistral, interrupted for this weekend by the chicane. And of course, the circuit has to accommodate GT cars and single-seaters and touring cars. And right under braking, the gap comes down by another length. Marchi Li for Hong Kong, China, using all of his experience.
And using a lot of the inside of the curbing, also coming through the middle part of the chicane. Now back onto the Mistral straight. Not in days when you don't run with the chicane, these cars will be running around 270, 75 kilometers per hour, but with the chicane, that takes about a good 10 or more kilometers off that. Now look, the French against the British, second and third places. That was a good pit stop for the Sky Great Britain entry, but France is coming back. And right now, we're seeing Simon Gachet, who is the fastest car on the racetrack, has fastest race lap with a 2:03. And remember, they're on the same set of tyres. They started this race. They haven't changed wheels and tyres. Simon Gachet all over the back of Sam Neri. Sam Neri having to go defensive, coming down into the chicane. And I suspect Simon Gachet is just going to hang around waiting. Well, does he look down the inside? It's very tight. He might overrun in the middle of the... He does do so, runs off the racetrack. Now he's going to come back, but he's going to let the Britain entry get ahead. Just about does so. So he lost the position, having made a bold move down the inside, but trying to get back at the earliest chance up into scene.
So it was a big dive by Simon Gachet, and he's not done yet. But Sam Neri is not somebody that just lets you go by. Simon Gachet will not have come across Sam Neri before. That's another of the fascinations of the FIA Motorsport Games. Into the pit lane comes Spain. Like I said earlier on, you're racing against people you don't often race against. So Spain pits. That's the last nation to serve the mandatory stop. Look at this battle, though, for second place. United Kingdom versus France. It looks as though the French entry is the quicker, but Sam Neri knows how to make a car wide. All the while, of course, Fabian Schiller is about 20 seconds up the road. Gachet thinks about a dive on the inside, can't do it again, he's way up the curb. The Virage Dupont beckons, but no, he's not going to be able to make a dive there. Simon Gachet all over the back of the UK.
But Simon Gachet had the better entry into Virage Dupont and will have the better drive off the corner. Sam Neri was on the more defensive line entering. That would mean he'd be slightly later getting onto the throttle. So Gachet has got the momentum. Sam Neri is going defensive, staying on the left-hand side of the track on the run down into turns 1 and 2. Again, watch what Simon Gachet is doing, looking for the undercut as they come out of the turns 1 and 2. He's going to get alongside on the run down to the chicane, and that's all because of what happened going into that final turn on the previous lap. Sam Neri was going defensive, and he had to remain defensive all the way through. France has taken over that position from Great Britain, United Kingdom, and will be on his way. He's still the quickest car, but look, Neri trying to get back and runs. Look, Gachet runs very wide. Now that was well and truly off the racetrack, and has he got a problem, or has he just made two little errors that we've not seen?
Sam Neri has only done something like 20 laps in total around here. Look at today.
Sam Neri way wide himself coming through turn 7.
So Sam Neri, who doesn't know this circuit anything like as well as Simon Gachet, who he's battling against, taking the fight to him. So, yeah, I think that's sort of even, isn't it, on that lap? They both ran very wide in differing places. And so France ahead of the UK. Now, Simon Gachet should be able to edge away just a little, I would have thought here, but... still, way up the road is Germany. 21.6 seconds up the road. Fabian Schiller, 25 3/4 minutes of the race to go. And there, through senior, France ahead of the UK. This great battle that's raging on for second and third places here. Now, this is from the outside. We were on board at the time, weren't we? But this was Sam Neri for the UK, making a look to the inside. And I think Gachet went wide because he sort of gave him room. He didn't want to cut across, did he?
No, and that photograph, that image, we didn't quite get that. He did do the right thing. He went round wide because he didn't want to get T-boned by the United Kingdom entry. So now that he's consolidated cleared that car in second place in clear air. The gap is a long, long gap. Remember, the lead car when Valentin Peerberg was behind the wheel, it had a 15 and a bit second advantage over the second place, the 93 United Kingdom entry. That gap is now up to 22 or so seconds. So what we've seen from Fabian Schiller is a great drive in the lead, consolidating that lead. What we're now seeing from Simon Gachet is a slightly poorer pit stop from Team France, but now Gachet is making it, clawing it back into second place, but 23.5 seconds behind the lead German Mercedes entry.
I mean, John, you've seen a lot of Fanatec GT races this year. Acodis ASP, great team on track. If there's a tiny weakness, it is in the pit stops. They just lose a second or two or three, and again, an Acodis ASP run car.
That pit stop was not about wheels and fuel. It was about just drivers getting in and out.
Now, we have been watching Sam Neary. He has taken over from Ian Loggie. Ian Loggie out of the car is with, in the pits, Gemma Scott.
Well, we're down here now with Ian Loggie, British GT champion, now representing your country, and watching Sam there, who stepped in at the last minute, really fighting hard.
Yeah, he's done a great job. We got up to P2 at the start. We had a great start, and Sam's done a great job there. I mean, he's done 20 laps in the car, and more astonishingly, really, is that he's only done 20 laps round Paul Ricard. So he's getting on top of it. We're holding on to P3. Looks as if that's how it could finish. But I think for Sam, first time in the car, for us to get a podium is a great result. So onwards and upwards for tomorrow.
Absolutely, and it feels good to be representing the UK, I imagine.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, really proud of it. So I just want to try and do a good job. Do a good job tomorrow, get enough points that going into the final race that we can really push. And you just never know what's going to happen. Things go wrong for other teams, so a little bit of luck, and we could be there. So we're learning every lap at the moment and enjoying every second of it.
Thank you very much, Ian. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Sam, he got the late call because it was only last night that Chris Froggatt had to bail because he was feeling unwell. So Sam Neary was put into the car, really, 13th hour. Interestingly, David, just while this has all been taking place, the fastest car on the racetrack is not a Mercedes AMG GT3. It's Carol Betts in the 777. The Poland entried Audi has got the fastest race lap, and again, consistently setting fastest sector times. That car has got outstanding pace.
Going really well, Karol Bash. Yes, you're right, for Poland. Then in 6th place, fastest lap, and the lead gap is 23.4 seconds. Fabian Schiller doesn't actually really have to go that quickly now. He just has to consolidate.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that Simon Gachet will try to eat in, but when you've got a 23-second advantage and you've got 22 minutes remaining of this race, to think you can take a second a lap out of this lead Team Germany Mercedes is a big almost, I think, impossible. The only thing that could occur, we have not seen it so far, hope we don't have a situation where we might get a full course yellow followed by a safety car. That's the only way I can see that Germany has got any prospect of losing that 23.5 second advantage over the second place Team France entry.
So there, Fabian Schiller leads the way for Germany, and with 23.4 seconds. Bear in mind, of course, that these races, the two qualifying races, aren't going to give you medals. All they're going to do are give you points for the grid for the main race. So, to a degree, keep out of trouble. And as Ian Loggie was making the point about Sam Neary, for him, it's seat time, and he'll be quicker again tomorrow. He'll be quicker again in the third race.
Absolutely, and that's all he needs. He needs familiarity with the racetrack, learning Paul Ricard. It's not a particularly complicated racetrack, but it's knowing where you can use the parts of the racetrack that we saw in the opening phase when the Team France were running in that pursuing that second place. And it was very easy. Eric Dabar used all the racetrack, where we saw Ian Loggie using less of it, and likewise Sam Neary using a little bit less of it. But once he gets his head around the parts of the racetrack, headlights are on. I was just, maybe just an image. I thought certainly the 93 Team UK Mercedes making its way down, start-finish straight in third position, having lost that to Simon Gachet after those two got a little bit together. 4.1 seconds, the advantage to Simon Gachet since he's taken over second place.
So Gachet thundering on, and the fastest lap of the race, as you say, has been done by Gachet now at 2 minutes 3.219. The gap's still 22 seconds. It's coming down, yes, but it really would need a safety car to bring him back in the mix.
It will be, but Gachet now, he's been released from this battle with the 93 UK entry. he can now just focus on what can I do, what do I need to do to try and reduce that, what was a 23-second gap 1 lap ago to what now is just a 22-second gap. So 1 second per lap would be very difficult to do over the next, 20-odd minutes. And that will only bring him within 2 seconds as we look at the Puerto Rico Ferrari running in 4th place. And that's been a good drive from the Puerto Rican team. They got up to 4th place on merit on the racetrack.
Yeah, that car has been there or thereabouts race long, hasn't it? And you notice the way that Bruno Baptista has dropped back for Brazil as the race has gone on. So 4th was Adalberto Baptista. Bruno Baptista has fallen back in the pack. So Germany leads France, leads the UK. 4th Puerto Rico, 5th is Poland. And I think another place is on the cards for Poland before the end. And bearing in mind that car had a spin at the start of the race anyway. 6th is Brazil, 7th is Switzerland, 8th is Australia, 9th Lithuania, and 10th is the recovering Ukrainian entry.
Well, he's got just under 6 seconds. There is the Ferrari, the Puerto Rican Ferrari. In the background, you can see the Polish entered Audi. So that gap when they came across start-finish line was just under 6 seconds, a tenth of a second or so. So Karel Betts, who's been setting fastest sector times, did set previously the fastest lap of this race in his stint. Now that's been ceded back to Simon Gachet, who is charging as hard as he knows how to. But look, Karel Betts using everything the Audi is giving him, and he will be very quickly, I'm assuming, onto the tail of the 4th place Puerto Rican Ferrari. Can he find a way around? Well, that'll be a different matter. Catching is one prospect, finding the way around is a different one.
So there for Poland is the Audi. Karel Betts changing brands, if you like, because we normally see him in Lamborghinis with great success, but adapting to the Audi very, very well. You can argue it's a comparable car. Comes up over the bridge, the tunnel into the paddock on one side of it, now past the pits, goes through, and let's see what that lap is. It's a 2 minutes 4. He's 1.4 seconds a lap quicker than the Puerto Rican entry ahead of him. So 4th place for Poland, he's on.
The Puerto Rican car, Ferrari, had a very bad lap a couple of laps ago, lost over 3 seconds to the charging Polish Audi. As we look at the Brazilian Mercedes, number 44, and that is Baptiste. So he is going to fall away from the Polish entered Audi, and he'll be under pressure from the 54 Swiss entered Mercedes AMG GT3, which you could just see momentarily in the background.
Interestingly, at the back of the field, Hong Kong, China still trapped behind Chinese Taipei. Mark Chi Li hasn't been able to get ahead yet of Evan Chen, who in fact Chinese Taipei just jumped ahead of Spain. So the car delayed with its penalty in the pits, but now the car of Gonzalo de Andres for Spain dropping down the order. Riding on board with Bruno Baptista, he is 6th, and on his last lap certainly slower than Poland ahead. So it looks as though 6th is going to be as good as it gets in qualifying race 1 for Brazil.
Yes, and the Swiss Mercedes Mettler behind at 3.4 seconds, and that will be, I suspect, closing as they come up to the conclusion of lap 19. Lap 20, I beg your pardon, on lap 29.
Lead gap still coming down. It was just hovering about 20.9 seconds last time between Germany and France, between Fabien Schiller and Simon Gachet. But so much of the work here is done by the co-drivers, isn't it? And you can ill afford to lose time. They're going through in 6th place, I should say, is Brazil. So Bruno Baptista goes through, and the 2014 South American Formula 4 champion. He's been a regular racer in single-seaters as well as GT cars over the years, and comes up towards the Virage du Pont. We are now nudging 6:45 local time. Race director telling teams to make sure they've got their lights on.
Yes, light falls very quickly at this time of year. Up on the Plan du Castellet, we're about, 400 or 500 meters above sea level. So the light will be falling, and it drops behind the mountains to the west of the circuit. But this has been a great drive from Karel Betts in the 777 Poland entry. Again, look at the times he's been taking out of the Ferrari directly ahead of him, and up to 1.4 seconds on lap 19, 1.5 on lap 18. Those are chunks of time. I mean, what can you do? You can do nothing. The Puerto Rican Ferrari has had a good run, but I think it's going to be absolutely mullered by the time we get through the end of this lap and start of lap 21, 22 with the pace of Karel Betts.
We touched on Sam Neary for UK being new to the circuit. There are plenty of other drivers in all sorts of disciplines who've never participated here, so they're still learning about the circuit. And again, they're just going to get quicker and quicker as the weekend goes on. So there's a lot to wash out of the weekend as far as the GT Cup is concerned. There, for Poland, Karol Basz, he does know the circuit well, accelerates now out of the chicane. At the start of this lap, he was 3.6 seconds back from the Puerto Rican entry of Victor Gomez Donato, the fourth. Let's see what that gap is going to be come the end of this lap as they turn now through Senior with just 15 minutes to go.
Certainly a fourth position is on the cards for the Poland entry, the Audi we see on screen. Whether he can make any further progress, because in fact fourth place is a further 14 seconds behind Sam Neri. So Poland can look, I think, optimistically getting a fourth position before the checkered flag comes out, but that's going to be about the limit of what they've got. The gap between first and second has come down 18.6 seconds more, because Fabian Schiller is just measuring his pace against the pace of Simon Gachet. He doesn't need to do any more. 14 minutes to go and they're 18 seconds behind, so it's a task impossible, again, other than if we have full Courchello and a full safety car deployment, which hopefully, in the interest of racing, we may not have to deal with.
So, with, as you say, 14 minutes to go, Fabian Schiller leading by 18.6 seconds. He's settling for the win, but Karol Basz continues to hunt down Puerto Rico. This is Poland. Remember, that car had a spin right at the very start of the race, so had it not lost that time, could be even better placed. The Ukrainian entry, and there is huge support, understandably, for the Ukrainian athletes here this weekend. This car now in 10th place. It comes over the timing line. At the wheel of it is Ivan Peklin, the car run by the German Pro Sport racing team, and that car also, after a spin on the first lap, has gained ground.
Yeah, got turned round in the chicane on the opening lap, and one only can think, if that car hadn't had the spin and bodywork being flicked up that's been around the racetrack from other contacts, but if that car hadn't had that spin on the opening lap, where might it be? And as you say, understandably, the support for this entry is running very high.
And you'll notice many of the nations carrying their country's name in their own language on one side and in English on the other. So there you've got the sort of dual script on the side of the Aston Martin. Others are the same. So the Ukraine entry in 10th place, and Ivan Peklin accelerates now onto the Mistral, Ukrainian karting champion, raced Formula 4 in Southeast Asia. He has actually raced here before in French Formula 4. So he's a guy that's gone from the single-seater route into GT cars.
He's doing a very good job behind the wheel of the Aston Martin into the chicane. So the gap was 1.4 seconds when they came across the line. The 71 Lithuania entry, that Audi R8 LMS GT3. As we get now the headlights getting into camera lens up through scene, and probably a lot easier to take with the track configuration we're using here than would be when you're running the full length of the Mistral straight. So into Le Bousset, that corner with a variety of options on entry, mid and exit. Whatever works for you, will then stick with it.
So 12 minutes of this first race of the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games still to run. Tomorrow there's more qualifying, there's more racing, and of course tomorrow for the GT Cup we've got qualifying race 2 and the main race, and it's the medals from the main race. There's also a whole host of other disciplines taking part over the weekend. Off track, there's drifting, there's also slalom, there's karting slalom, there's esports. So much going on here, and indeed away from the circuit. Cross car about 2 hours away. The rally around the roads of Saint-Baume has been busy today and will continue to be tomorrow as well. And the nations scoring points on that medals table for the end of the weekend.
Gap between 9th and 10th. This is the battle we're looking at, or we were looking at a second ago. Still 1.5 seconds. If we go back to this battle, Karol Basz, look again how much he's taking, almost 3/4 of a second and a bit more on lap 22 out of the 4th place of the Puerto Rican Ferrari. So 11 minutes to get the job done, and taking that amount of time out of a car you're running down, it's very hard to defend that 4th position for Puerto Rico.
These drivers, of course, have got a very important stint, not only because they are faster than their lower graded co-drivers that started, but of course these guys, John, have also got to not only fight for position, but they've also got to adapt to the change in the conditions. Now, yeah, I suppose if you're in the car going through it, it's you are getting used to it as the light changes, not jumping fresh in, I suppose, but equally it's a very different sort of a stint from the first driver.
Well, I don't know how many of these drivers would have driven in these light conditions. I mean, it's not dark.
Yeah.
Actually, the camera makes it look lighter than it is. Looking out of our commentator position, I would say it's dark. But our cameras, they've got such good abilities to give you the maximum light that is available. But there we see coming across at the end of lap 22, the gap between this battle for fourth position. It was 1.9 seconds. Waiting for it to reset, comes across the line now, 1.1.
So this is the lap, isn't it, on which Karol Bash in the Olymp Racing run Audi for Poland. He's going to have a go at Puerto Rico. The cars bounce over the curb through turn 1 at Verrier. So the Polska entry, the Polish car, Karol Bash at the wheel of it, accelerates down now towards the chicane. He's getting closer and closer and closer. And not only that, but also doing absolute bests in sectors on the previous lap. He's a man on a mission.
Absolutely. We know that he had earlier in the stint fastest lap of all. That's now been taken away from him by Simon Gachet with his charge. He's now 17.9 seconds behind the race leader, but it's academic. But this battle is far from academic. So Karol Bash is using everything that Audi is providing him to try and run down the Puerto Rican Ferrari. And the closer he gets, the more difficult it's going to become. 9 minutes or so on the clock. He's going to get onto the tail of the Ferrari. How he will deal with Puerto Rico will be very interesting indeed. Poland versus Puerto Rico. Battle of the Peas.
Absolutely. Well, 2 peas in a pod possibly here. Ferrari versus Audi. Puerto Rico versus Poland. If I were Puerto Rico, I would be quite happy to let Poland go. Keep out of trouble, bank points. You don't want a damaged car overnight. Just learn the circuit.
David, that's why you're a commentator and not a race driver.
This is a fair point, John. You're absolutely right. But this is only a qualifying race. Were this the medals race, the main race, you might anticipate a bit more defence. But right now for Poland, Karol Bash getting closer and closer. Simon Gachet has taken back the fastest lap of the race. But Karol Bash is going to take 4th away very shortly from Puerto Rico. The Audi for Team Poland comes then now towards the Virage de la Tour, then down towards the Virage du Pont. Let's see whether Karol Bash makes a dive at this part of the circuit or whether he's going to do it on the pit straight. He goes round the outside of Puerto Rico, lines up on the inside. Poland goes through. Great move.
Yes, he read that very well indeed and just had simply more pace to go around the outside of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, the better exit of the Village du Pont, going to come back. The Ferrari is marginally the quicker of the two brands in a straight line. Looks to go down the inside, coming into turn 1 and 2. And is he alongside? No, he had to concede.
It was close though, wasn't it? Puerto Rico back up the inside. So Victor Gomez there having a really good go. 7 3/4 minutes to go. But I think now that Karol Bash has been able to get through a couple of corners, you can see how that gap stretches. Now he's sort of settling himself into that 4th place, swatted away Puerto Rico. So Poland up into 4th place in what has been one of the best recoveries of the race.
Extremely good effort by Poland and a lovely pass around the outside in turn 14, set it all up. It was just on the exit where Ferrari were able to come back, where Puerto Rico thought if we can get alongside the Audi up into turn 1 on the inside and reclaim 4th position, try to just frustrate, to stall out the pace that we've seen from Karol Bash, but to no avail. So now securely into 4th place for the Poland entry, and a great drive by both drivers, having again been involved in contact earlier in the race.
So out of the chicane they come. Now, meantime, up the road, Fabian Schiller has been losing a little bit of time to Simon Gachet. This is Germany ahead of France for the race lead, but Germany ain't going to be caught because the margin is too big, and in turn, the UK is going to hang on in there for 3rd place. Now, where is the UK relative to Poland? The answer is 15.7 seconds ahead. That's not going to change before the end, barring a spin. But Karol Bash has had a really good effort to get himself back into the mix, just missing out on the top 3 in this first qualifying race. So there's the leader, that's Germany. And coming out of Verrier, that is Fabian Schiller, another single-seater racer turned GT driver from FIA Formula 3. He's made a real name for himself in GT cars and also in sports car racing. So Germany leads the way. There, 2nd, France, and that gap is 18.7 seconds. Simon Gachet for France does, though, have the consolation of the fastest lap of the race.
It was a big task to try and run down the lead German Mercedes, but I mean, Simon Gachet has been trading fastest laps, not so much with Fabian Schiller, but more with Karol Bash at the Poland Audi entry. I mean, the pace of Gachet and of Fabian Schiller is probably nothing. It's just a matter of the time that France, they lost a couple of seconds over the best pit stops. The German entry was those 2 seconds quicker. Great Britain was between the two, but eventually that 15 per second advantage that Germany had built up in that opening stint, too much for France to do anything about.
And there is the UK entry, Sam Neary in third, parachuted into this car at the 11th hour. He knows what a Mercedes AMG GT3 is like. He doesn't know the circuit, so 20 laps completed prior to the race. He's a quick learner, and we know from British GT that he's very, very rapid indeed. A really good, hard racer, so the more he knows about the circuit, the more you can expect him to be in the mix tomorrow. And of course, for tomorrow's second qualifying race, the drivers in now will be the start drivers.
Well, that'll be an interesting little race, because we're going to see maybe the quicker of the two drivers starting that race and then handing over to their less experienced teammates. So again, the pit stop will be pivotal. But look at the sparks coming from the left front of the Sky Tempest Mercedes under UK banner, and we see that quite frequently from this car, more so than maybe some of the other Mercedes AMG GT3s.
Yes, it's the United Kingdom car, entered by Sky Tempesta Racing, run by Ram Racing. So a lot of different people involved in this, but Dan Shufflebottom's team operating the car, and Ian Logie that's raced for Ram Racing this season. Sam Neary has raced for the family ABBA Racing squad, and they are the Team United Kingdom, the Team UK entries. Up towards the timing line, that car comes, it'll break the beam with 4 minutes to go. So it's going to be certainly 2 more laps for the leader. Might squeeze 3 out of it, given that he's so far up the road. But Germany, France, UK, Poland, Puerto Rico, Brazil. That is the top 6 in our opening race of the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games here in Paul Ricard. It's, of course, coming hot on the heels on Wednesday of the opening ceremony in Marseille. For Poland, Karol Basz goes over the timing line. He is lapping quicker than Neary, but actually now not as quick as the 2 leading Mercedes.
I mean, he's done all he can do. He's got 4th position. He's got no chance of catching Sam Neary with 3.5 minutes on the clock. So again, he's done all the hard yards. He's got himself up into 4th position. Look at the Puerto Rico Ferrari, not that far behind. In fact, 1.7 seconds when they came across the line. So the pace that Poland is illustrating now is more, well, I've done what I've needed to do. I've got the position. I can't do any more, so I don't need to keep pushing as hard as I would have done in the early phases of my driving stint.
So with 3 minutes on the clock, it is going to be Fabian Schiller and Valentin Pierberg for Germany, who are going to come through to take that win, seemingly from France, from the UK, and then Poland and Puerto Rico. Still squabbling over 4th and 5th places. Victor Gomez, who's driving that Puerto Rican entry, is a driver that's won the Porsche GT3 Challenge in America. He's also won the North American Lamborghini Super Trofeo AM category. So again, an experienced GT racer. And Victor Manuel Gomez Donato the 4th to give him his full title for Puerto Rico, comes into senior now, in a sense, finding it easier perhaps to chase Poland than fend off. He's got something to aim for now. He knows exactly where his braking points are, where the lines are, so he's learning the circuit, if you like, by following the Polish entry.
You can look at it that way if you want. I mean, it's often about experience of a racetrack. Again, I don't know how familiar he will be with driving a Ferrari 488, but certainly he's done a good job for his nation. The pace of Karol Basz in the Poland entry, Audi, was just a little bit too great at this point. Whoa, what's going on here?
This is Spain being lapped by Germany, and Spain runs off the road there. So making a mistake was Gonzalo de Andres Martin, and he's back on track. But that car has really fallen away, sadly, in the second stint.
Yes, it has. I mean, considering all the good yards that were done early by Navarra, suddenly I don't know where the pace has gone.
No.
And running wide like that, okay, let the lead car go through. But maybe that was a bit generous in allowing him that amount of room down at turn 5.
Yeah, Gonzalo de Andres is not an inexperienced driver. He's a TCR Iberico champion of 2 years back, for example, in touring cars. Maybe not the most experienced GT3 racer, maybe perhaps learning about the car still, but that's why these qualifying races are so useful. It doesn't matter what the gap is, because the points are for your position. That car should be higher up tomorrow.
Well, there is the 19 running 13th, and regrettably I have to say Spain running in last position.
And Spain, I think I'm right in saying, is the only nation with a representative, an athlete in every discipline this weekend. The ASN of Spain has really embraced the FIA Motorsport Games, and it is to be applauded for that. So, as Gonzalo de Andres carries on for one more lap, we are into the last minute of the race. Lithuania here in 9th place, keeping the Ukraine at bay. This is Jonas Gelzinis.
And this is the closest battle that's taking place on track right now. They've been together for the last 6-7 laps. And there's really been nothing that the Aston Martin in 10th position has been able to do to clear the Audi directly ahead. But, well, we've still got 14 seconds. But when they come across start-finish line, that will be the checkered flag.
Indeed so. And Jonas Gelzinis for Lithuania. Ivan Peklin for Ukraine accelerates on. Jonas Gelzinis, if you follow national UK racing, you might remember from Carrera Cup GB a good few seasons back. He was a regular front runner, and there he turns through senior. But up front, Germany is on target seemingly to win convincingly the first qualifying race in the GT Cup in the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. The Lithuanian entry accelerates then now up towards the completion of a lap, but for Germany, a really good start to the weekend. That is Jonas Gelzinis. And the Lithuanian car in 9th place. That was another one, remember, that had a spin early on in the hands of Iantis Navikauskas. Banging over the curb is Fabian Schiller. They're looking ever so dramatic in the darkness.
Yeah, I don't know why he needed to do that, because there's no pressure on him. He's got a, well, now a 17-second advantage. And you can see, looking into the garage there, the team are going, why are they shaking their heads? Because they don't like to see their car being ragged unnecessarily on the last lap.
So, for the last time, into Le Beausset comes Germany. Fabian Schiller at the wheel. Really good first stint by Valentin Pierberg, the SPS Automotive Performance entry of Valentin Pierberg. And he watches on, and he did a great job in the first stint. Fabian Schiller has responded in style in the second. And so, our first track activity of the weekend is going to go the way of Germany. Of course, other disciplines have been busy all through the morning. Free practice yesterday, but on track, this is our first race, and it's going to be the German car that is going to win the first race here at the Paul Ricard circuit. Up to the checkered flag comes Fabian Schiller, and the GT Cup qualifying race 1 is won by Germany. Fabian Schiller, Valentin Pierberg for Germany win race 1, the qualifying race number 1 for the GT Cup from France, because this is going to be Simon Gachet to bring home Eric Dabard's car. And up towards the timing line, France now comes. Valentin Pierberg, part of that winning German entry, is a very happy man indeed. And there, a lap down, is the Spanish entry of Gonzalo de Andres, who comes across the line. So it is Germany from France, 17.4 seconds, the margin between them at the end. And for third place, Sam Neary has just come across the line for the UK. Fourth is going to be Poland. Fifth is going to be Puerto Rico. Karol Bash, who's been one of the standouts of that race, takes fourth. And Victor Gomez, a lot of learning done in that stint. He's fifth for Puerto Rico, and sixth should be Brazil, Bruno Baptista, on his way towards the line. So it's a rather dominant drive in a way by Germany, but some really good battles through the field.
Indeed, and I think one of those obviously we've mentioned and talked a lot about was the pace of Karol Bash, but all the way through the field we've seen little battles developing into big battles. We've seen contact, and we've seen great recovery drives. And there's one of those recovery drives there, the Ukraine entry, the Aston Martin, the third of these three cars, trying to make it 9th place, but can't quite get it done. So he finishes behind the 71 Lithuanian entry, the Audi. Yeah,
Australia 8th, Lithuania 9th, Ukraine 10th, Chinese Taipei 11th, Hong Kong, China 12th, and Spain, the only lapped entry, in fact, down in 13th place. But a good job done by Germany, and the darkness has really fallen now, hasn't it, over the Circuit de Castellet. And for their Switzerland, 7th, Yannick Mettler bringing home the car started by Dexter Müller. And Germany victorious by 17.4 seconds in the end. We'll have a look at the result in a moment, but Germany, France, UK, the top three at the end of qualifying race 1 in the GT Cup. Some really good racing we had up and down the field, and a race of changing fortunes for some, definitely changing light. You can see how much darker it is now. And the circuit is still going to be active this evening. We're not done yet in terms of activity, but the GT Cup teams now will download data. Drivers will discuss what they've learnt and come back even stronger tomorrow. So qualifying race 1 for the GT Cup, won by Germany. France, second from the United Kingdom in third. Poland, fourth ahead of Puerto Rico with Brazil sixth. Switzerland, seventh ahead of Lithuania with Ukraine ninth. And Australia down in 10th on the last lap ahead of Chinese Taipei. Then Hong Kong, China with Spain finishing in last place. Valentin Pierberg and Fabian Schiller, the winners for Germany. For France, Eric Debard and Simon Gachet second. And for the United Kingdom, Ian Loggie and Sam Neary in third place. Poland's Marcin Jedlinski and Karol Basz fourth. Puerto Rico's Francesco Piovanetti and Victor Gomez fifth. And for Brazil, Adalberto and Bruno Baptista round out that top six. So good stuff to kick off the weekend. Good honours claimed by Germany. And Fabian Schiller and Simon Gachet, the drivers.
Well, the celebrations for the German team down here now. Valentin, a fantastic first result for you guys on track.
Yeah, really, I'm thankful to the team. They did a great job. We had a good qualifying, so we started from pole position, and I was able to really make a good gap so that when Fabian got in the car, he could just easily finish the race, and so he did. And yeah, well done to everybody. First place, first race. Let's hopefully keep this way, and yeah, we'll keep pushing, and hopefully we can win the trophy.
Thank you very much. A great start. Well done.
You.
A very happy Valentin Pierberg then for Germany takes honours, and that's did make the point, John. The light goes quickly. That's what it looks like now.
Oh, looks lovely down on the, well, not on the beach, down at the harbour.
Yeah.
And well, most of the restaurants will be closed, but still a wonderful view.
It is, and so many people, of course, coming from all over the world to race here this weekend and participate as athletes for their nation, and exploring Paul Ricard and the Le Castellet medieval village for the first time. So the GT Cup is back on track tomorrow with the qualifying race 2 tomorrow morning and the medals race tomorrow afternoon. So we look forward to your company for those races tomorrow. For now, from all of us here, goodbye.
To the FIA Motorsport Games 2022, coming to you from the Circuit Paul Ricard and the surrounding areas at this beautiful location in the south of France. My name's Louise Beckett and I'm your host for the Games, and I'm joined by multiple British GT and Le Mans winner Darren Turner. Darren, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks very much. It's amazing. I walked in this morning for the first time into the event, into Paul Ricard here, and I didn't realise how big the event was going to be. It's incredible to see so many teams, so many nations here, and 16 events that are going to go on over the weekend. So yeah, incredible to be here this weekend. Looking forward to the first batch of races. We've got one underway already, so yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. It
really does feel like a festival and a celebration of motorsport, doesn't it? As you walked in this morning, just seeing the historic rally cars, the karting, the auto slalom.
It really does. I mean, the karting obviously is very grassroots, high level, but when you come from, you know, all the racing that I've done over so many years, and then you go and see the karts again, it's just like, this is exactly what got me into this racing in the first place. And you know, different disciplines that I've never seen before. So trying to get my head around those disciplines and what's the performance, how they get the results and everything else. It's lots of things to learn. And I'm sure many of the competitors have been around, had a look at things that they've never seen before. And it's great just to have a different view on motorsport. And that's what's so magic about this weekend.
Well, we'll talk about all of those disciplines a bit later, but on Wednesday evening, all of our competitors and teams went down to the Old Port in Marseille for the opening ceremony.
Welcome to the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games here in our amazing host city, Marseille. We are here this evening to begin a 4-day celebration of motorsport from every region of the world, with competition taking place in a record-breaking 16 different thrilling disciplines.
And we could not have chosen a better venue in which to introduce the 72 nations taking part in this second edition of the FIA Nations competition than the remarkable Musée des Civilisations de l'Europe and de la Méditerranée, or MUSEM as it is more commonly known here. It was built to document how cultures across the Mediterranean helped each other and learned from each other through collaboration and competition, and therefore it stands as a perfect metaphor for what the FIA Motorsport Games are seeking to achieve.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Marseille, mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue à Marseille. Pourquoi nous avons choisi Marseille? Why did we choose Marseille? I will have to say it was an obvious choice. It is a city, it's a vibrant city, it is a multicultural, it is open to the sea, it is open to the world, and it's a city who loves sports.
Good evening, everyone. I think the feeling we first have is that we are very proud, but very thankful. Reaching 72 ISNs, 72 clubs, means 72 countries and 72 organizations working on creating a national team. Looking to 16 categories in a national area is huge. And they all did a great job by bringing those teams together and bringing everyone here to France.
I'm really glad to be here for the second edition of the FIA Motorsport Games. 72 countries, 500 drivers, that's amazing. And you know, a driver, normally you don't have every day the chance to race for your country. And I have to say I'm really lucky, you know, to be able to race for my country many different years. And I think that really needs to be a great memory for all of you, you know, to represent your flag.
Let's start the Parade of Nations, actually, with our first host city back in 2019, and the very first delegation here on stage today, Italy.
And they're on their way. The national team from Brazil. And the Confederação Brasileira de Automobilismo, the CBA, is taking part in 9 events and has brought 11 competitors. It's our nation, it's France. Come on! Okay, sorry, it's home advantage for them, and it's definitely a team that can challenge for medals, particularly with the local hero Mathieu Arzeno. Now, please, would you give all a big, huge welcome to one of our most welcome nations, Ukraine. In 2019, Ukraine walked away with a gold in the Drifting Cup, and the winner of that thrilling final, it's Dmytro Liuk. He's back to defend his crown. This year, he's joined by 11 compatriots in a very strong Ukrainian squad.
I hope that everybody has a safe, competitive and enjoyable few days at the Motorsport Games, and it gives me great pleasure to announce the Games are open.
How amazing was that to see 72 nations, 16 disciplines over the next 3 days. We've got so much to talk about, Darren. But I should have just give you a bit of a setting so you know where we are. We've got our studio here right in the heart of the paddock. And if the camera just looks up a little bit, we've got the podium there. So all of the medalists are going to be coming here. We're going to be seeing them, talking to them. Of course, part of our coverage, you've already heard from the commentators, David Addison and John Watson. You saw Gemma Scott in the pit lane. And we've also had Ben Constanduris out at the rally stages. And Ben's come back and he's joined us now. So Ben, hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yeah, great to be here.
It's nice to have you here. So we have a lot to talk about. So where do we start? Shall we start with the GT Cup qualifying race we've just seen? Darren.
That was a feisty start.
Qualifying race, I should just say.
Exactly. So I wasn't expecting the fireworks that we had so early on in the race weekend, and I thought that was all going to come later on in the main race, but once the cars settled down, the second part of the race seemed a little bit more as you would expect a GT race. People thinking about the moves and not making so many rash sort of dives under people. But there's a couple left in that last section. But certainly the first 10 laps, I was surprised with how heavy people were going, how hard people were going. But one of the aspects I think is slightly different for this race is there's no tyre warmers. So a lot of these GT drivers are having to get used to the fact that they're going out with cold tyres, having to get the temperature in and having to get the pressures right. So there's more actual pressure on the teams now to try and get those tyre pressures to be right when they're up to temperature. So it's quite difficult for everyone's on that sort of learning curve at the moment. But in terms of the racing, it was fantastic in places. There's some really good battles. Poland obviously came through, but I think Germany got away lightly. If France had been right with them in the first part of that race, then the second part of the race could have been completely different. So I know Germany won it, and they sort of dominated that race. But I do think if France was there a little bit earlier and made that position from third to second a little bit earlier, it would have been a different race. So let's see what happens in the second qualifying race.
Well, second qualifying race is going to be in the daylight, but this was going into the sunset and the sun going down.
Yeah, which is it's great for the drivers. I mean, obviously the first drivers wouldn't have had such a big problem with the sun going down, but the second drivers, that transition, and driving around certain corners, the sun would have been very, very low, making it a bit more tricky. But once you get the sunset done, those next sort of 10 laps maybe were pretty special out there in the car, because you're relying on the sort of the lights of the car, and things start to look a little bit different out on circuit. But no, brilliant. It was great to see. I really enjoy watching the cars racing at that time of night, because you get to see the brakes glowing. Yeah. There's some flames and etc. from the exhaust, so it just makes it all a little bit more dramatic.
Ben, did you catch any of that GT Cup?
Just the very end, coming in and hearing and seeing the cars during the sunset is, as you say, a fantastic kind of moment. The sunset here in the south of France is always beautiful. And so with the backdrop of GT3 cars roaring around the circuit, it rivals what I've been doing today. It rivals it.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that, because you've been at some beautiful locations, I'm sure, as well, all around the circuit at the different stages. So tell us what's been happening with the rally.
Yeah, so we've got a rally across the 3 days. They had qualifying yesterday evening at the racetrack, and they'll be doing that same stage again in a few minutes' time. Hopefully I'm going to have to leave here and join David in comms. But then they've also been out on traditional stages out and around this area. Three very different stages. The first one, almost unbroken tarmac, very, very narrow, horrible really to drive in a road car, which I did yesterday. The second one is through a big mountain pass, a traditional kind of mountain col, if you like, lots of hairpins, lots of downhills, lots of braking episodes, if you like. And then the third one on a not dual carriageway, but a dual lane road, very wide, very fast. And so three different characteristics of tarmac stage, and drivers have been really struggling to actually get a car that works across all three of them, because you want a car that's supple for the bouncy stuff but stiff for the smooth stuff, and you can't have it all.
Well, we've actually got pictures back now, so we can take a look at what's been happening with the rally. You can maybe talk us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Estonia were the first car out onto the stages. This is the beautiful town of Le Castellet. Not very many people have been to Le Castellet. They've been to the circuit, but not the medieval village. And just look at the views. We're only about half an hour away from the circuit there, and it is just stunning. So this is Estonia. Georg Lineме, who's a regular in the European and World Rally Championship in this very car, in this WRC2 Polo. It's run by Stefan Sarazan's team, who runs a lot of R5 cars, and he is one of the favourites ultimately. Bit of a surprise was Turkey today. They really got up to speed well and on a surface which is not anything like they're used to driving. Most of the time in Turkey you rally on dirt, and there is a bit of tarmac, but usually that's covered in dirt. So this is very, very grippy for them. Much more similar to what the Spaniards and Pablo Lopez is used to. So he has been right at the sharp end, and in fact lies second overall. But the only driver who has experience of these actual stages is Mathieu Arsenault, and he therefore has a 42-second advantage in the R5 category because he's done these races before, and you could see it. When you stood beside the stages, you could see that he knew where he was going. Other people were still learning. They'll do these roads again tomorrow, so more and more experience means that that gap should tighten. This is the Rally 4 car, front-wheel drive, plenty of little Peugeots. They're noisy little things. I don't know why they need to be noisy, but they are very, very noisy. And Italian Roberto Daipra was the 4-stage wins to his name, but ultimately the 2-stage wins taken by the Spaniard meant that they come into this last stage of the night pretty much equal, a couple of tenths between them. So very, very exciting in the R2 category. Again, Turkey right up there. Ali Turkan really enjoying his time. And there is then Spain, Ortiz Palmero, who has, as I said, Spanish roads tend to be quite similar to these kind of mountain passes, and so he seems to have learnt what he needs to do quite quickly in that car. Belgium, lots of tarmac rallying in Belgium, but tends to be flat.
Yes, it does.
And tends to be 90 rights and big braking into slow corners and then big acceleration zones through those vineyards. Ypres Rally, one of the most famous rallies that exists in rallying. And so a little bit of Tom is struggling a little bit. We do have historics. Maybe I shouldn't talk. Maybe you should just listen because it's an Audi Quattro and it's just incredible. Echoing around the mountains. Zippo is the man to beat. Zippo by name, Zippo by nature. But we do have this Porsche, which obviously fan favourite. When this car pulled up to the finishing line of the second stage, he had a Red Bull helmet on. I thought, Red Bull don't sponsor historic old drivers. Here is that Red Bull helmet. Antonio Sainz is the brother of Carlos Sainz, so he's nicked his brother's helmet for this, and actually has been doing historic racing since the 1980s. So representing Spain and an opportunity to ride on board the Porsche as we descend down the Col de, I'm going to say this wrong, Espligé, I think it is. I should be better at French than I am.
Yeah, you should. You've lived here a while. I didn't spot that name, the sign's name.
Well, neither did I until I spotted the helmet. I thought, yeah, it's really hard to get hold of a Red Bull helmet. But actually they're split. So Zippo and Antonio Sainz are split by the Czech Republic in this little Opel Kadett, and that's being driven with plenty of gusto. We do have other cars. It's a feast of different vehicles from the 1970s. Team GB represented, but ultimately this Sunbeam doesn't really have the power to match the Audi Quattro. And historic driving and historic drivers tend to take it more as a tour around the countryside, the opportunity to drive around these roads without anybody coming the other way. There's a Volvo in German colours. The Mayer brothers driving this, and that is rallying.
I really enjoyed the historics, looking at those, the Audi in particular. When I grew up, that was one of my favourites as well, so it's really nice to see those and hopefully get a chance to go out there later.
It's actually nice to see them driving them properly as well. You know, it's so often you see historic drivers, especially in rallying, touring around, but you know, Zippo's properly giving it some in that Audi.
Yeah, it certainly looked like they were like pushing on, really pushing on in some of the Kadett would probably be another favourite for me. Again, a car that as a kid I was always thinking about, well, when I'm older maybe I can get one of those. So yeah, great to see those cars out there.
Absolutely raspy. It was really, really great to kind of hear going through the mountain stages. But I think a bit more of a challenge for those guys because they don't have the setup flexibility that an R2 might have.
Yeah, I can imagine it's basically you'll come to the event, give it a good shot with what you've got. Probably there isn't actually that much they can change on the car during the event itself. So it's good to see the old cars. But the obviously the R2s and R4s out now. Next session.
Yeah, and for Italy, you know, they've got Zippo in a gold medal position in the Audi, and he's kind of maybe guaranteed that. But the Rally 4, Roberto Daipra is really on the edge of leading that category. We've got a full day tomorrow before the top three will then race on the track, and they will race each other. So we are scrapping everything they've done for the last 2 days. The top three then go onto the track together, and they will race each other like a rallycross race.
Wow, okay.
And that's how we establish our medals. So a little bit of a twist at the end.
Completely different.
yeah. That's not a format of rallying that I've ever come across before.
Not at all.
So what else can we... the other thing I'm expecting to see is France coming back, or losing time, sorry, to the guys who've had 1 day of experience, because the stages tomorrow, we've got 2 stages. They are a repeat of what we've done today, with a little extension on the end of one and the start of the other. So they have experience of those stages, and so Mathieu's 42.3 second advantage that he has from today's going out there and doing passes he's done before, whereas everyone else learning for the first time. I think that advantage will disappear a little bit, and so then the pure pace of these guys like Georg Lindemer will start to shine through, and he should be able to chip away at the 6 stage wins that Mathieu's got.
What's it going to be like for them to do the stages at the track? Because for us, that's going to be fantastic. You never really see rally, do you? Because it's always out there somewhere. So for them to actually be here in front of us and all of the spectators is going to be great. Yeah,
and they're not doing the actual track. They are using the track, but they are doing bits and pieces differently to what the GT cars have just done. So they'll be pulling hairpins at the chicane just behind us. I think it'll be quite difficult to know where you're going around here.
It's always a case of that. Paul Ricard is a beautiful circuit, but with so many layouts, it's quite easy to get lost in the GT cars. So I can imagine if they're even approaching the corners in a completely different direction from the normal racing way, it's going to be quite interesting to see if they can remember where to go. But all the guys that have been on circuit today, the F4s and the GT cars, they've been cleaning up the circuit so well and rubbering up the track, and then tomorrow when they turn up, it's going to be completely different again after all the rally cars have been on the circuit. So that's going to be a bit of a problem for those guys tomorrow.
Yeah, I really don't know. Looking at the map of the stage, it's quite confusing. So how they know? I know they've got somebody to tell them beside them, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to work.
Well, that wraps up really the rally coverage from today, doesn't it? But we have got some pictures that we will be able to go to shortly just to see those stages. But let's talk about the countries just quickly. What's the countries that you think are going to go for it in the rally?
Well, France have got the advantage of being here and knowing everything.
Of course they are. The levels on the microphones for the
sun may have gone down over the Circuit Le Castellet, but we are not done with action at this, the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games, day 1, because special stage 7 of the rally is about to get underway. The teams have been off along the roads of Saint-Baume during the course of the day, and now they, after a regroup, are going to have the first of 2 stages here, one tonight, and then tomorrow, something very different, the medal stage, where the top 3, based, if you like, on the conventional way of determining a rally, cumulative times over the special stages, the top 3 Rally 2, Rally 4 historic rally competitors will have a shootout rallycross style race with a joker lap, and that's where the medals are going to be determined. But this is more of a conventional special stage, using lots of the routes around the roads of the Circuit Le Castellet, and there you can see the rally team getting themselves set. Now, let's quickly just mention that the Motorsport Games, yes, of course, matters for drivers, but it's all about representing your nation, and so we'll be talking about the countries as much as the drivers. Rally 2 has been rather dominated over the course of the day by the French entry of Mathieu Arzeno, because he's been quickest on each of the 6 special stages thus far. In Rally 4, it has been a bit more open, although the Italian entry of Roberto Dapra has been very, very rapid indeed, and taking on the Spanish driver Oscar Palomo Ortiz as the course car is set to go. Now also we have the historic class, and the Audi Quattro of Zippo, of Andrea Zinian, has been the car to beat over the course of the previous 6 special stages. So that potentially is going to round out the day, a bit like Matteo Arzeno potentially will, 7 out of 7. So the SS7, good to go. The course you'll have a look at by the course car in a moment, the 0 car, which of course closes the stage for everybody else, and then the next car through after that will be the first competitive car, and you use some of the pit lane, some of the racetrack, some of the interior roads, and that will piece together this special stage. And it's going to be really dramatic, that is for certain, around here, because of course the cars have been on tarmac, yes, but public roads now, very different sort of billiard table smooth surface for this rally stage. There the cars starting to make their way into the queue behind. There is a running order in which they will be released, and so the first car to go is going to be the Estonian entry of Georg Linnemai, James Morgan, his co-driver. You don't have to have driver and co-driver of the same nationality here, just the driver representing their nation. And after stage 6, the Le Bastide, the Estonians currently 3rd in Rally 2. So that is the first car that we're going to see, and Matteo Arzeno is going to be the last driver through. So the order thus far is France from Spain from Estonia, and as I say, we're looking forward to seeing what this stage throws up. David Addison and Ben Constanduros overlooking the circuit, overlooking the special stage. It's amazing how Paul Ricard can adapt itself so readily from being a racetrack about half an hour ago for GT cars to almost a motorsport theme park this weekend, with esports, with auto slalom, with karting slalom, and the team's good to go on a circuit that is going to be a very different type of stage, as I say, from that we have been used to earlier on. So out and about all day have been the teams, the drivers, their crews, and our cameras, and also Ben Constanduros, who has been with his bobble hat on and a Scotch egg, no doubt, like a proper rally fan. What's the French equivalent of a Scotch egg?
I don't know, but you definitely can't wear a bubble hat today. It's far too warm out there.
It looks like it's been a good day, certainly for France, because in Rally 2, Matteo Arzeno has absolutely ruled the roost. I mean, I've been looking at stage times coming in while I've been based here, but you know, he has been hard to beat.
Yeah, and it's what you would expect, unfortunately, because he has the experience of the rally. This is a rally that is every year run in around December time, called the Soundbaum Rally, based effectively on 3 stages, but they managed to get 2 days worth of rallying out of those 3 stages, which means you do a lot of passes of those same stages. And we know from rallying that if you've got the stages in your head, much like if you're a circuit racer, that helps a huge amount with confidence and with knowing where you're going. And you could see in the way that the car is being thrown around out there on the stages that Mathieu is braking later than everybody else. He's got the car on its tiptoes. He can turn it easier because he's right on the edge of things. Whereas the likes of Georg Linnemai from Estonia, who, you know, if you put them in a straight fight, you would say Georg has more experience. He's got ERC and WRC experience. He should be the faster guy, but lacking that experience, and also, from their point of view, a little bit of tarmac experience, because Estonia is obviously fast gravel rallies. A little bit of confusion as to when the stage is starting. Co-drivers conferring.
You have to check this and write this.
Yes, so we had a change of timetable on the circuit, but the rally stages didn't change their times. So the 6 stages stayed exactly the same, and then what we have in rallying is a thing called a regroup, where they all come together, and it's basically a way of resetting the clock to allow you to do something at a later date. Because there's so many, it's this whole system that these guys go through. So the first car should be at 7:30. And I think the commissionaire believes that the stage should be starting at 8 o'clock, which is what the original start time would have been.
Yes. I was going to ask the question, but never really got round to it. Has the rally moved as well? Because we've had circuit racing activity brought forward. But of course, rallying works, as you've been making the point, slightly differently. You have a control time that you have to clock in on. And you can be penalised for being early as much as late.
Yeah, exactly. The whole day is controlled by these time controls. You go through, you have a time card. We just saw that with all the co-drivers. That says when they need to go to each individual place, and the time must match. As you say, late or early, you get penalties for both. And so do have those time cards, and that's why the co-drivers can quite strongly go to the stage marshals and say, no, it says this on my card.
Yeah, I'm not checking in early because it's always the co-driver's fault if there's something like that. A different Jose Maria Lopez, the Spanish rally driver, waiting for his co-driver to come back with the news. But yes, the idea was that the stage would have started. Now, we had, just before you came into the booth, we'd seen the Zero car get ready to go.
Okay.
Now, granted, I've not seen it go, but it was there ready to go. And more co-drivers striding down to say, what the, in a variety of languages.
And the Zero car, just to explain, there's a multitude of cars that go through a stage before the first rally car goes through, the first competition car, let's say. You have safety delegates. The FIA safety delegate will go in half an hour before. Then we have a 000 vehicle, which will go 15 minutes before. That usually is a road car, and it's usually driven at road-going pace. The idea is to look at the spectator zones, make sure everybody's in the right place. 00 is then driven a bit more sprightly to almost try and set a time that then all of the marshals' posts can work out when they're expecting the next cars.
Yeah.
And then 0 is usually a competition car that is not timed, and then finally, 5 minutes after the 0 car, you would then expect to see wherever you are spectating from said car.
Well, on track, there are, as you can see, the course vehicles, and that does not suggest that we are yet in a position to release cars because, of course, before you can open a rally stage, you've also got to close the circuit from the circuit racing activity. And it's not that long ago that we had a GT race finish. So, yes, it's all very well bringing a timetable forward, but, yes, you need to accommodate the rules of rallying. But I think we are getting to that point now where the 0 car is going to be allowed to go. What about dramas on the stages? Has anybody been in strife today? Anybody picked up damage, or has it all been quite plain sailing?
Unfortunately, stage 1, we lost Mexico
in
Rally 4. Right at the first stage, I think 3 or 4 kilometers in, they crashed out. And then from what I saw, the second stage, Germany had a puncture. So they lost a minute in the Rally 2 category. And we did have a mechanical failure for Brazil as well.
And there, the rally officials.
I do a look to confirm, and it's okay. It's in 5 minutes we send the 0 car.
Nicholas Klinger, the FIA rally delegate for this event, just explaining to everybody how it's working.
I think he said it's okay, and in 5 minutes we send the 0 car.
Which means we've got to be 10 minutes before we send the first car.
Yeah, indeed. Right, so Mexico crashed out. Let me just go back to that, because does that mean that they are out of the event, or can they come back on day 2?
I haven't seen the car, but if the car is okay to be fixed, they can come back under supplementary regulations.
Okay.
They get penalised 10 minutes for every stage they've missed.
But they can at least make the journey worthwhile.
Yes, exactly. They're unlikely to get into the top 3. As I explained to Lou just a little bit earlier, that's a whole different story for tomorrow evening, that we're going to see something very, very new. They do have experience of this stage, though, in the light, thankfully, because this was what they used as their qualifying stage. We don't have qualifying in the World Championship, but in the European Championships and any championship that chooses to, they have a qualifying stage which then that does not set the running order for the next day, because running order in rallying, very important.
Yes.
How is the stage in tarmac? When you've got people cutting off the track, they bring gravel onto the surface. So the earlier you are on the running order, the better, the cleaner the road. Yeah. But in gravel, it's the other way around, because you're sweeping the gravel off to find the grip in the bedrock underneath. So we do a qualifying stage. The one who wins the qualifying stage gets to pick his starting position.
Right.
So Georg was fastest in qualifying. He chose to be first on the road. Everybody else chose sequentially? No, that's not the right word. Second chose second, third chose third, fourth chose fourth. There's a word for that. But I don't know why, Mathieu from France decided to choose not last, but he was the 11th on the road or something. So he decided that he wasn't going to be penalised that much by 11 cars in front of him cutting, and so chose to be a bit further back.
So the rules of rallying applied, but this is a very different kind of special stage, as we say. There's the safety car, the FIA safety vehicle, which will do a lap, just to make sure that the chicanes are in the right place, and you can tell it's proper rallying, this, because it's all done by candlelight, isn't it? You know, the officials, just like you see on other events, sitting in the darkness. But the course car, as it is, effectively, the FIA safety car will do a run through the stage. So this is good news because this does edge us closer to the stage itself.
And it'll give us an idea as to how the stage works, because as I said earlier, it doesn't absolutely 100% follow where we would expect the circuit to go. For instance, the first corner is a right-hander rather than the left-hander that the GT cars have.
But then you do rejoin the circuit for a bit, but you don't go all the way down to the Virage du Camp or the chicane from memory. There is a sort of cut-through that's been used. And this is one of the beauties of Paul Ricard. There are so many different configurations of the circuit. You can do all sorts of things with it. So out of Verrières, and then you turn sharp right, and this loops you round to the Mistral straight. But then the Mistral chicane has got so many different configurations. You can do quite a lot of mileage within that as well, can't you?
Yes, you go back on yourself about 3 times, don't you?
Yes, as you will see in a moment. So this is a useful exercise, actually, watching the safety delegate go through the stage, because up now towards the approach to the chicane, but there's another chicane on the opposite side, first of all, so you can go this way and under the bridge, well, sort of behind the bridge, but hairpin your way round, and then back to the Mistral. Now, I've touched briefly, Ben, on as we're watching this stage, Rally 2. We've also got Rally 4, and we've got Historic. Now, Rally 4, less powerful cars, less modified, but still very competitive, and the Historics is just a chance to wallow in the history.
Yes, Rally 4 is what we run the junior WRC configurations to. Front-wheel drive, usually 150 brake horsepower-ish.
Yeah.
Actually, very tricky things to drive, because obviously only the front wheels doing the steering and doing the accelerating. Fine on a race circuit where you want to be smooth, but in rally, you really want to throw it around. So some funny techniques that they use to get those cars to pedal around a circuit at their most potential. We won't really see that on this because it is a racetrack, so they'll be nice. They probably, or should be, nice and smooth. And then, as you say, Category 2, historic cars, an opportunity to acknowledge the massive support that the FIA have in historic racing generally. You know, we don't have any other historic categories, for instance, on circuit or anything like that. But there are so many historic categories within FIA that it's great that the rally cars have been able to go out there and seeing the Quattro and the Porsche, particularly Opel Kadett. Darren said that's his favourite. Then they're not necessarily driven at their potential. Some of them are quite valuable, but they are driven pretty well.
So we've got a chance then to have another look at the remainder of the stage. This comes out of Signet, but then don't go all the way down to Le Beausset. There's another cut through. I have to say, I'm learning all the different elements of Paul Ricard here. So many different elements to the nature of the circuit, which lends itself to an event like this. Then you're back on the power towards the Virage de la Tour, towards the Virage du Pont, and the zero car will be next. At what intervals are the cars released? Are we on a minute, 30 seconds?
In the stages out in the forest, we were at 2-minute gaps.
Okay.
But we will be at 1-minute gaps for tonight. And really, that just allows enough space for the different cars that are out there and the different levels of performance that they're able to do. So it also gives you a bit more breathing room that if you do have an issue on stage, you don't have 5 cars in the stage to remove, you've only got 1 or 2. So Nicholas has finished his stage in the FIA safety vehicle. And it looks as though we've got 0 car on the start line. So the Zero car, as you can see, is a competition vehicle. This is not a car which is participating within the rally, but it is a car which sets a reference time for when you're out in the forest. It's all the marshals, because you will go past multiple marshal points out in the forest. Yep. The marshals will then use that to reference if a car goes missing, and they're expecting a car at 2-minute intervals, and someone goes missing, they can then report back and say there is a car missing between marshal point 3 and 4, and that might be, before television, that was the only way to know if somebody had an off or not.
And of course, this is always, if you're a spectator by the side of a special stage, a huge moment, because you know that you're getting ever closer to the first competition car come through. If you think to a World Championship round, for example, at this point you've got the whistles blowing for the marshals, you've got the fans getting ever more eager, because certainly if it's a good World Championship round, they'll have been there for hours and hours and hours waiting for cars to come through. So this finally gets you ever closer to the first competition car through. It also illustrates, does it not, just how much quicker than a bog standard road car a rally car is, which of course have to be road legal themselves.
Yes, because they have to drive between the stages on public roads. That's one lovely thing about rallying, is seeing a WRC or an ERC vehicle in, well, that's a bit wide, in the city centre, or when we go to the lights of Sardinia. They start in the medieval heart of Sardinia, and they're able to drive out. Yes, we are able to take GT3 cars into the centre of Spa, but we have to close the roads, and these things pull up beside you when you're queuing for fuel.
Yeah,
they're fantastic.
Yeah. I can remember driving back from stages on Rally GB in days of yore with, some of the other cars hammering past you. And of course, they got to obey by the speed limits and traffic regulations. You can't jump a red light because you had a puncture on stage 4 and you're trying to make up time. You've got to adhere to the rules of the road. Anyway, you don't have that problem around the circuit, that's for sure. But
very easy to get done speeding around the perimeter roads of the circuit, though.
Very true.
The speed limit is quite low, which of course has to go into the regulations of the time between the stages, and that then sets the rhythm for the rally, because you can only do a lot of the roads around here 50 kilometres an hour. And there are police out, and they are watching, and there is, there's a couple of speed cameras, but most of them are broken.
Now, yes, and in time-honoured fashion, of course, the teams were given a chance to recce the route, not in the competition cars, but, for example, on Wednesday, when I was around the roads here running, quite a few teams you could tell were off on their recce. They have the reference numbers on the cars, and they'll go for a look at the stages. Right, it's time to go. The clock ticks down, and the first car away, as we've been saying, is for Team Estonia. George Linneman, James Morgan sitting alongside him. So we've got the clock running. This will give us now a chance to have a look at exactly what a stage time around here is like. This is Rally 2. These are the quickest cars, Ben.
Yes, and this is a stage which is still used in that local rally, but certainly will not hand the advantage over to the French like we've seen out in the forests today. Georg was the fastest man on this stage in qualifying, a little bit ragged there, but it's not as though he's got no experience around here. They've recce'd it. He's got a co-driver, James Morgan, sitting alongside, giving him the notes, telling him where he needs to be. It won't be quite as rapid fire as he would be out in the forest and through the coals, but he's still giving him enough of an idea of where he needs to go, especially when he comes to this slightly confusing section with the chicanes.
You're right, they have recce'd it, but they recce'd it in the daylight.
Yes.
They drove it as a qualifying stage in the daylight. Now, as you can see, it is very dark indeed. Next to go then is the Turkish entry of Orhan Avcıoğlu, and the Turkish driver blasts away. Regular in Turkish events, began with a Peugeot 306. He's had a Fiat Palio, a Fiesta Mark 5 ST. He's been a European Championship, a WRC2 and Baltic Trophy regular. So for Turkey, Orhan Avcıoğlu is on stage now, and slightly slower in the first sector, the first timing point, first intermediate on the stage than was Georg Linneman.
Not a surface at all that Turkey are used to. The tarmac surfaces that they do have, much dustier than you have here, especially, they were talking about how grippy the surface was out on the stages. They're now on the racetrack, super smooth. I think there have been a lot of tweaking going on. They had a service, did they not, between the last stage and this?
Yeah.
So they could have actually stiffened the car up a little bit, because they do want to run it quite soft out on the stages, because it's quite bumpy. But here, obviously, not a bump in sight.
Yeah, Turkey 5th coming into this stage. The classification after SS6 puts them 5th, and Spain is next to go. Now, the Spanish team currently 2nd. So, at the moment, Jose Maria Lopez is something like the best part of 40 seconds behind the rally leader, Mathieu Arzeno, for France. But let's see whether that can be shaved over the course of this. As you look at Linneman heading up towards the end of the stage then, this will give us a target time as he heads up towards the flying finish.
Beautiful last corner there. Really had the car just drifting a little bit. 2:36 is a little slower than he managed in qualifying, I think. But of course, you have to take into consideration that it is dark now, and it was light.
My brain can't cope with a rally stage and the word qualified being used.
Yes, I know.
Progress, is it? Must be modern. So, 2 minutes 36.750 for Estonia, we've got Turkey, we've got Spain, and we've also got Argentina on stage as well. Paulo Soria for Argentina is out there as well. This for Spain, getting perilously close to barriers, it felt there, is Jose Maria Lopez. The car pendulums its ways. He threads it through that chicane, but all the time trying to keep up the momentum, aren't you?
This is a brand new Hyundai, only been released for customers less than a year ago, and it really is a step up from what they had before. Using the handbrake there just to rotate the car quite a lot. He's up against the might of Skoda, and Skoda in WRCT are the car to beat. It's a solid car, it hardly ever breaks, and it does seem so comfortable to drive, whereas the Hyundai, possibly faster as a car, but very much on the edge, and it's looking good.
It is. Turkey has gone quickest. Now, the times that we're giving you are the unofficial times. The rally has its own timekeeping service. The track activity has a different timekeeping service. We're looking at their times, which are very, very close anyway. But 2 minutes 36.542 is the Turkish time that puts Orhan Avcioglu top. But I reckon that Jose Maria Lopez is going to go even faster. The Spanish car looking very, very good indeed, as he has been quickest so far in Intermediate 1 and Intermediate 2.
Borjan Reseda alongside him, co-driver for Carlos Sainz, for Danny Sordo for a couple of rallies, and actually stood on the podium with Danny in Portugal 2 years ago. But Borja has actually been mentoring Pepe for a long, long time, and so he's going to come to the line now.
This could be in the 235s, couldn't it? It is 235.421 then. Provisionally puts Jose Maria Lopez fastest for Spain. So Jose Maria Lopez Planeras, regular in Spanish national events, goes quickest and does so by over a second.
Lindemann is going to be disappointed with that, to be third of the 3 cars that we've seen finish so far, because slower than Turkey as well, considering he was the fastest man in qualifying. That's a little bit disappointing.
Indeed so. Right, we now have blasting away the car from Team Belgium, Cedric de Checo, but there is Argentina. This is Paulo Soria, who is making his way up towards the end of the stage. He's been busy in the Italian series this year, as well as in the ERC4 and the Clio Trophy by TopSport Championship, so doing a lot of mileage.
But in front-wheel drive cars, the Clio Trophy and ERC4, both the same car, front-wheel drive Clio R4 that we'll see a little bit later on. Only second time in a 4-wheel drive machine, and that is a totally different way of driving a vehicle, so doing pretty well for himself.
Yeah, he's gone second, and admittedly was a second down on Lopez, but even so, as you make the point, belying his lack of experience in 4-wheel drive technology. That's a pretty good effort. Right, where do we go next? Because I think after Soria, there was De Checo for Belgium.
Yeah, so that's the Belgian entry. And we've also got Hungary out there as well.
Yes, indeed.
And Martin Lazio has been quite spectacular out on the stage. He's quite an aggressive driver. Checo telling me earlier on this today, the guys are quite fast, aren't they? That was his summary of stage 2. So really looking around him and thinking, gosh, I'm not quite sure I can keep up with that kind of a pace.
He's an experienced competitor. It dates back to 2006, regular in Belgian events and WRC3. There is Martin László then for Hungary. And he has been a regular on Hungarian national events for many, many seasons. Remember, the time to beat on this stage, 2 minutes 35. The real fascination for me is when we see Matteo Arzeno, because as the rally leader, unbeaten all day, pressure's on.
Yeah, but the advantage maybe not necessarily there for this one. Plus, he has a 42-second advantage coming into this stage. Remember, this is just a time that's added on to the times from the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And he's got that huge advantage. So no necessarily need to take a risk, but how much risk are you actually taking out there? If you do make a mistake, you're only going to lose time and maybe, at worst, clunk a concrete barrier.
Right, this is Martin László for Hungary, coming then through the next of the chicanes. This, you could argue, is the ultimate single-venue rally stage, isn't it? Beats going round Croft or Three Sisters in the UK, for example. You can do this on a modern-day Grand Prix circuit in excellent weather. But, of course, in the UK, there is this Circuit Rally Championship, the Motorsport News backs, that takes rally cars onto race tracks and builds special stages within. For Germany, then, Björn Sartorius, who's been a regular this year in the Central Rally Trophy in Germany. He's had a couple of wins, in fact, in German national events this season. But you were saying he was in strife at the start of the day.
Yeah, picked up a puncture on the right front corner on stage 2, quite early into the stage, 11-kilometre col, and had to descend the stage with only 3 wheels. You're allowed to do that. You don't have to stop. And actually, it was better for him not to stop because you change a tyre. It's about a minute and a half. He only lost a minute, but a little bit frustrated by that. Apparently just cut too much.
Nikos Pavlidis for Greece is next away. He has been a regular over the years on Greek events, but also occasional WRC events, Monte Carlo, Rally Monza, for example. But you can trace his career right back to the late 1980s when he started in a Ford Escort Mark II, which makes him a proper rally chap, doesn't it, if you're an Escort Mark II driver?
An interesting choice of WRC events as well, with the Monza Rally being something that is more akin to this. They used the Monza circuit and make lots of different variants of stages out of the Monza circuit. So he has done a pretty good job here. It does not look particularly comfortable the way that he's having to drive the car, taking a couple of stabs at the corner that I was sitting at earlier on today. So maybe getting more experience of these particular, very unique style of road.
You can sort of equate this in a way to Rally Monza, I guess, because it's on a race circuit. This is Oliver Mellers for United Kingdom, who accelerates away. He comes from good rallying stock. His dad, Chris Mellers, has been a mainstay of the national rally scene for a long, long time. And 27-year-old Oliver Mellers, who actually has been regular in French events this year. He has been competing in the UK, won the Riponian stages, but actually he knows some of the French roads pretty well.
Yeah, and interestingly, a nationally homologated Iris here, rather than the internationally homologated cars that we've seen before. So this is something kind of specific to him. There's not many of these about, and therefore he knows it very well. However, he did have power steering failure in the first loop, so didn't have a particularly fun morning trying to hustle that thing, even though it's nice and small. And obviously, the higher speed you go, the easier it is to steer. But ultimately, put pay to the pace that perhaps he could have shown us.
But this is the man who has dominated the day, from what you've been telling us. Mathieu Arzeno for France, knows the car, knows the roads, and he has been unbeaten. He blasts away then, and the time he's got to beat is that of Jose Maria Lopez. It's still 2 minutes 35.4. We've got Spain ahead of Argentina, ahead of Turkey, Estonia 4th, Belgium 5th, Germany 6th, Hungary 7th, Sweden 8th. We're waiting for a time from the UK, Greece and France to round out Rally 2.
Yeah, I wonder whether Laszlo had a mistake on his... it looks like in the middle sector he lost a couple of seconds, whereas he didn't lose much in the other two. So I think a mistake from the Hungarian driver to lose those couple of seconds. Ultimately, globally, it doesn't matter too much. That's a little mistake as well from France, a little bit wide.
And also, it wasn't an absolute best within the first intermediate. It was only, of course, a personal best, because you only get to go through it once, but it wasn't purple, which would have meant he was quicker than anybody in the first split. But of course, he's got a lot of the stage to make up that time.
And ultimately, he'll be looking at the overall picture as well, rather than the stage wins.
Yeah, but there's bragging rights.
There is.
I won every stage today, guys. Come on, I'm ready for day 2. So, Mathieu Arzeno, as we've been saying, experienced French competitor. He's competed in the junior WRC as well. Oliver Mellers is hustling on as well. Now, where are we anticipating him? He's got to do a low 2:36 to go second, hasn't he?
Another interesting fact from our French competitor is that he is a single-seater champion in France.
Okay.
So he has good tarmac breeding from being out here and doing this kind of a stage. Doesn't look massively comfortable, I have to say, by the looks of the way the car is moving around underneath him. It could well be just too soft for this particular stage. And remember, if he's in the top 3, tomorrow evening, the top 3 will face off each other and go on this track at the same time, and that will decide our medals. So if he hasn't got a car that works here, then he might not be able to win the rally,
no, exactly.
even though he wins all the stages and has a minute advantage coming into that last medal stage.
We're into Rally 4. We've already got a man that's taken a number of stage wins today, namely for Italy, Roberto Dapra, on stage, and now we've got Ali Turkan as well, but we want to see Mathieu Arzeno here. We also want to see a time out of Oliver Mellers, and Oliver Mellers only did a 2 minutes 43, so he's 9th for UK, and Nikos Pavlidis for Greece only 10th. So Arzeno, can we get him into the 2:35s? I'm not convinced. 2:36s probably. He comes up towards the flying finish. So far, it is Spain looking as though it's going to be a stage win, and it is. For the first time all day, Alzino is beaten 0.8 of a second slower than Jose Maria Lopez. Finally, a different stage winner in Rally 2.
Doesn't make much change to the overall, though. The gap is still over 40 seconds for Arzeno over the rest. There's a good battle, actually, for second between Spain, Argentina, Turkey and Estonia. They're all in there. I think even Hungary might be in there as well. But now we turn our attention to a battle that's even stronger and could change, which will change the running order for tomorrow. Italy versus Spain. And I think the gap coming into this is 0.4 of a second.
It is indeed. It is Spain ahead of Italy. They've been trading the top times over the course of the day. That is Italy. That is Roberto Dapra with the Peugeot 208 Rally 4. But yes, this is a much more competitive class than Rally 2 has been. So Dapra for Italy. It is Spain ahead, thanks to Oscar Palomo Ortiz. Turkey third, but that's about half a minute back. So it's very much a two-nation battle between Spain and Italy. Very different engine note that we have from the Rally 4 contingent, and Dapra is going to set the target time for Italy here. So 2 minutes 47 is your Rally 4 target time. Roberto Dapra has had 4 stage wins to the 2 of Oscar Palomo Ortiz.
Yeah, but the gaps, those 4 stage wins, the gaps are smaller than the big. It was Ortiz winning the first stage of the loop, which is the really, really narrow and bumpy one. Very high abrasion tarmac on that one as well. He was the one that took 5 or 6 seconds per loop of stages on that first one, but didn't win any other of the stages. And that was enough to give him that 0.4 of a second advantage coming into this. Dapra's now got the benchmark time, and now we need to see where anybody else can match. Ali Turkan for Turkey has been very, very impressive. And here we have Tom Renaissance, who has been struggling, actually. He hasn't been quite as comfortable in this car as he'd like. It looks still soft. He said it was soft earlier, and it still looks like it's a bit wallowy.
Yeah, Tom Renaissance in one of the Clios, he's second in the Belgian Junior Championship this year, 4 times a winner. So, you know, his CV would suggest he should be up there. But again, learning the circuits, learning the stages, learning the roads, and we've been making this point in some of the race activity. It's a bit the same, Ben, in rally terms. The nature of this event means you're going up against people that you wouldn't ordinarily compete against. So actually, it's a really interesting level. You can start to see how good people are against others that you don't normally see.
And of course, they'll never compare themselves to that person until they've looked at the time after the stage. And there was a time in WRC where you had the split times on your dashboard and you knew exactly how good or bad you were doing. That's all gone now, and obviously in the lower categories that never existed. So these guys have to just run their own they have to just run their own pace, basically, and you drive to how you feel.
Yeah. So Roberto Dapra was, just to give you an idea, about 1.9 seconds slower in the first sector than a Rally 2 car was.
But Spain have just gone faster.
Indeed.
By quite a chunk, actually. It looks like 2 seconds a difference, second and a bit.
So Spain over Italy, it's... I was going to say 0.7 of a second. 2:47.0.
Oh, yeah.
2:47.7. So 0.7 between Italy, but Spain ahead. Yes, this is Tom Renaissance, as we've been saying, for Belgium.
So that means the gap is out to 1 second for the lead of our Rally 4. Very, very large 1 second.
But Renaissance is pressing on regardless. Ali Turkan, 2 minutes 51 for Turkey. So that car came into the stage third and in danger of losing that third place. Ali Turkan was half a minute back, but he's losing further time, and that's going to enable potentially Ricardo Sousa for Portugal to get closer. Let's just see where Renaissance goes within Rally 4. He will cross the line at 2 minutes 48. That puts him third. So he jumps ahead of Turkey on that stage by the best part of 3 seconds, as now the Netherlands gets ready to go.
Yeah, so something's happening in this middle sector that's a little bit of a struggle. We saw Laszlo from Hungary having an issue in the middle sector, and Turkan lost a similar amount of like 2 or 3 seconds. So somewhere in there is a bit of a struggle for them. Martin van Hoek has been all day one of our last cars out for Rally 4.
and is 7th of the 8 in the standings at the moment. India is last, incidentally, but Martin van Hoek then sets off. Another hugely experienced driver, go back to, well, at least a decade, and he was in club events in a Peugeot 205. This is Ricardo Sousa in the very spectacularly coloured Portuguese entry. Now, Sousa came into the stage 4th, and needed to make up 18 seconds, give or take, against Ali Turkan. He's not going to beat him by 18 seconds, but if he goes quicker, we'll narrow that margin. This is important.
Nibble, 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 every single stage.
Yeah.
Sousa with a...
Oh, go slower. After all that, missed out by 0.7 of a second, so he was actually slower than Turkan, so the gap, forget what I was saying, stretches out.
He also lost his drive shaft in practice.
Ah.
Great time to have it done. One practice lap, drive shaft went, new drive shaft in for qualifying, and so far Sousa hasn't really been where you would expect to see him, but he's much more of a gravel driver than a tarmac driver.
There you have for Greece, Panchalis Chatzimakos, who is another Greek championship regular, but he has done WRC events in Greece. In fact, he won Rally 4 in the WRC Greece event this year, so he knows this sort of car. Now, okay, World Rally Championship Greece, Circuit de Castellet, very different proposition. However, he knows how to get the most out of one of these relatively underpowered cars, I suppose is my point.
The biggest difference really, yes, okay, gravel to tarmac, but the feeling that tarmac gives you, the way that you lean on the car, the way that you rely upon that grip level, rather than drifting and sliding around, it's a very different feel. Right, historics. This is what we've really all been waiting for.
Oh, takes you back, doesn't it, to the early 1980s when Audi came and rewrote the rulebook, really, of rallying. We went from Group 4 towards Group B, but it was the Quattro that was the first four-wheel drive car, and the sport's never looked back. We've got to get Martin van Hoek, first of all, back to the end of the stage. So we've got Martin van Hoek, and we've also got Sanjay Takala, the Indian driver, to go. So there is Martin van Hoek, making his way towards the end of the stage. Rallying, it's worth just making the point, new to the FIA Motorsport Games. It's been a long time between editions, of course, because of the pandemic, but rallying introduced this year, and actually, although you could argue that a dozen per category isn't a vast number, put them together and it's a good enough number for a rally in its own.
There's less than a dozen in WRC.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
10 or 11 cars in most WRC events from the top class.
Yeah, sure.
35 in the Rally 2 category these days. It's definitely, they're streamlining over the last couple of years of the FIA has really, really helped the numbers build in that category. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of R5s out there, R5 being the same name as Rally 2, which is slightly confusing, but they used to be called R5s, they're now called Rally 2 machines.
Right. Now, we're going to get the historics, of course, underway. You've seen Andrea Zinian, or Zippo, as it likes to be called. First of all, we need to get Sanjay Takala across the line, the 54-year-old Indian. He is a regular in Indian and Malaysian events and the Asia-Pacific Rally Championship. But again, great to have people making the effort to come all this way. Now, this is the Quattro. I think this is perhaps the star car of the evening, isn't it? Andrea Zinian, who's been a regular in modern as well as historic events, whether it's been in his Audi or his Lancia Delta Integrale or his Peugeot 205. He's got quite a nice collection of them, but yeah, you can either watch the car or reminisce, because like I was saying, Audi absolutely changed the nature of World Championship rallying with that oh so distinctive engine note.
Wastegate opening is the big thing, isn't it? Just brilliant.
It took a long time, really, for Audi to get the cars to be reliable. They were quick, and of course they had the traction, but the reliability wasn't always there. But once they got that sorted out, championships, of course, came with alacrity. Antonio Sainz for Spain is the next one away in the Porsche 911 SC, the 64-year-old Spaniard. He's got a 911, as you can see. Oh, and the door open, so the air conditioning is there. He needs to try and close that. He's got a 912 as well as a BMW 2002 TII. He's got all sorts of cars for Spanish historic events. Andrea Zinian, Zippo, is hustling on. He will set the target time, and just like Mathieu Arzeno had not been beaten all day, well, Zinian hasn't been beaten all day either. This could possibly change things, but I think the car's got the grunt, and actually it's one of the more modern within the class.
The Opel Kadett that we haven't seen yet has actually got within half a second of Zippo.
Okay.
But ultimately, as soon as you saw the entry list, the Audi Quattro has the grunt advantage.
Yeah. So he likes to be running under the pseudonym of Zippo, Andrea Zinian. He goes over the line. 2:51.946 then is the target time within the historic class. And Antonio Sainz has got the door closed in the Spain Porsche 911 SC.
You might recognise the name Sainz.
Rings a bell.
Yeah, this is his brother, which is remarkable. He's got a Red Bull helmet with Sainz on it, and I thought, wow, that's unusual. You can't get yourself a Red Bull helmet very easily, and especially one that says Sainz on it. But then, of course, he is Sainz, and then didn't take long to find out he's the brother, and has been rallying historic cars as long as Carlos Sainz has been rallying in the World Championship. So a rallying family.
And probably has been his brother for a long time as well.
Yes, I imagine so.
Now, this Opel Kadett, the Czech entry of Wojtek Staff, that's been, as you were saying, a really rapid car all day. And, OK, it's a bit breathless around here, but has been well driven.
Yeah, absolutely. The stages are actually quite fast out there. So this car really could do with a more sinuous route. But it's been driven really, really well. And if it had the same performance as Zippo, we could have had a really nice little fight at the front of the field.
Now for Germany.
This has confused me, David, today. Twice.
What, Siegfried Mayer's Volvo?
It's well, it's silver, and it's got German flag on it, because it's from Team Germany. So in my brain, it had to be a Mercedes. And it kind of looks quite
That's what you
boxy.
mean, yes. It's a silver arrow.
Sort
of, yes.
If it's going to be silver, yeah, it's quite a big car to be rattling around the stage.
Siegfried Mayer has a passion for Volvos because he has this 244 GL. He's got a 740, a 744 that he's rallied as well. So clearly likes his Volvos. And Antonio Sainz then, brother of, uncle of, comes up towards the end of the stage, and he's going to try and beat a 251, and he's nowhere near that, is he? He's a long way off.
Yeah, it's been a bit like that all day, I'm afraid.
It's a great noise, though.
Oh, yes. And imagine in the coals at the second stage of our loop, you can hear it for miles before you can see it.
Well, Wojtek Staff in the Opel has gone second. Antonio Sainz goes third, but he is something like 14 seconds down on Zippo. And just to make the point, we've got 8 cars within the historic competition. And after stage 6, Zippo, the Quattro driver, leading from Wojtek Staff, the margin nearly a minute, just under 55 seconds between the two. Antonio Sainz third, Siegfried Mayer you're looking at for Germany fourth, and the Volvo ahead of this car for the United Kingdom, the Talbot Sunbeam of Tim Jones, which sort of takes you back to Henry Toivonen and Guy Freckelin winning, as Henry Toivonen did the RAC Rally, but another car, the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus, that makes a good noise. Has a distinctive bark and hustles its way up towards the next chicane, but I would say that might have a problem because Tim Jones is being relatively cautious in that car. Up towards the timing line, so goes through the flying finish. Tim Jones goes by, and that's again a small engine car, a 3:15.8. That puts him the slowest thus far. We've not actually got a time out of Germany yet, which is surprising. I thought Siegfried Mayer had already been through, but he's not come by yet.
So just a couple more cars to get through. There is Germany. I think he started behind. As I say, quite a big machine. Look at the roll on it to wind through some of the smaller parts of the roads. As I said, the stages, all three of them have very different characteristics. The third of the stage is nice and wide, nice and flowing, very fast. The Col up and down over the Col de l'Espalier. And then the first stage, very, very narrow in the second half, and kind of annoyingly bumpy in parts as well. So a really nice mix of tarmac stages, and actually looking around the area, there's plenty of opportunity potentially for a gravel rally as well. There isn't one that exists right now, but there's plenty of gravel stages in through the National Park Saumbaum, which is where we are actually. We're in the National Park here, and why so many people are cycling around as well. 2 larders to finish off our historic tour from Slovakia and Estonia.
And of course, France is one of those countries that has a tarmac and a gravel championship. So certain drivers prefer one discipline from the other, don't they? Whereas, for example, the British Championship, the Premier British category, has a mixture. But then, again, at club level, there are tarmac or gravel championships. Yeah, the larders are going to be the last 2 through. But when we have the cars back on track tomorrow, it will be for the medal stage, the so-called golden stage, and that's when they have the shootout for the medals at the end of their competition. So it's a conventional rally in terms of cumulative times until you get to the last stage.
Yeah, exactly, which is a nice little twist. And there is an even more complex part to that, where they have to take 3 different routes around the 3 laps that we will see on that medal stage. So a bit like Rallycross, where you've got a joker lap, you actually have 2 joker laps, and they will each be allocated a different lap per lap that they're doing, and they do 3 in total. So that will be nice and confusing for you and I, trying to work out where everybody's going. That's the 37 larder over the line. Slovakia, I think Slovakia and Estonia are having a magnificent battle for last. The gap between them is absolutely nothing.
Technically, it's the battle to be penultimate, isn't it?
Yes, true. If you're aiming to be better. No, it's now gone out to 1.5 minutes, so it was very, very close before. I think actually the Slovakia car had an issue coming back to service in the middle part of the day, so that's where it lost all its time.
But the larders, I mean, I know over the years they've been a bit like the early Skodas, were a sort of tongue-in-cheek rally car because they weren't the quickest and they weren't the most fashionable of brands, but they were rugged and they were reliable and they were easy to buy and to maintain. And you know, in given countries, lots of people have gone rallying in those cars. Go back to the early days of Skoda, before it became part of the Volkswagen Audi group. You know, the so-called surprising Skoda tag. Every year, John Hogland won his class on the RAC rally. It wasn't a surprise at all because they were rugged, durable cars.
Yeah, and of course, coming out of Russia, that whole Eastern Bloc is full of them, and full of them in their national rally championships. Rallying is so huge across the world. Yeah. Every little small national event is still full of fans, and especially in the likes of Hungary and Estonia, incredible support for just, you know, your local rally.
Yeah, and you forget actually just how much of it there is, whether it's...
you just need to go on one of those fail videos on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely, and there are so many events. Yes, yeah. Well, actually, you mentioned the word fail. Nobody's got a drama, really, through that stage at all. Nobody had a spin particularly. Nobody made any mistakes that we saw. So it's been a solid end to day one of the rally element of the FIA Motorsport Games, another of the new disciplines brought in this year.
They will be going back out into the mountains tomorrow. They've got 2 stages which will run 3 times. It's actually a longer day in terms of competitive miles than they did today. It's about 55% of the rally done tomorrow, and then we will get that medal stage where we will bring the top 3 of each category, and they will rate each other across 3 laps around here. And that will then decide who gets the gold, the silver and the bronze medals, and we don't then really reference any of the 2 days worth of stages in the mountains they've done.
So let's just have a quick look at the times on that stage. This is the stage order, not the rally order. So if you take the times merged together, with obviously Rally 2 at the top, it is Spain ahead of France, ahead of Argentina, Turkey 4th, Estonia 5th, and Belgium 6th. That means that Jose Maria Lopez with Borja Rosada sitting alongside for the first time all day was quicker than Mathieu Arzeno, Paulo Soria 3rd fastest. In Rally 4, Oscar Palomo is fastest for Spain, ahead of Italy's Roberto Dapra, and 3rd in Rally 4 was Tom Rensenet for Belgium. And if you go a little bit further down the overall order, 17th on that stage was the leading historic. That was the Audi Quattro of Andre Zinian of Zippo. and that car dominating all day within the historic tournament, because Zippo for Italy was fastest on every stage. He's the only driver that has been able to claim that honour now, and he was ahead of Wojtek Staff and then Antonio Sainz in the historic competition, with the slowest driver being Estonian Marko Matic with his Lada, and he was just over 4 minutes at the end of the stage, this 7th of the event.
So one change from the previous stage that puts Turkey ahead of Hungary, up to 4th position for Orhan with Martin Laszlo. We saw that we saw that he had made a mistake in the middle part of the lap. He drops down to 5th, 1 minute 12 seconds off Maciu Arzeno. So, an opportunity to get themselves onto this Paul Ricard circuit after a day in the coals and the forests around this area, onto the slick tarmac of Paul Ricard to throw their R5s and Rally 4 cars around. And France looking a little bit ragged and therefore not being able to win the 7th stage of the day for Martin Arzeno. Instead, Pepe, there was a little spin from Greece. Just about holding on to that car. The door opened for Antonio Sainz, but it was the Audi Quattro of Zippo. Once again fastest, 7 stages, 7 fastest times in historic, and it looking good for Italy, looking good for Spain as well. He's going to really put down some good times tomorrow. Rallying continues here at the Motorsport Games.
How awesome was it to see those rally cars in the night here at the circuit, Darren? To hear them going on behind us, it's quite special.
Oh, really special. It was so nice that they're right behind us.
Yeah.
It really is the best studio ever to be in. And being able to watch the cars around this circuit in the evening, under the lights, etc. In the certain areas, there's some lighting that they can use, and other parts of the course they're using is very dark. But yeah, great to see that France didn't have it all their own way today. Obviously been very dominant out there, and then with Spain taking the stage win this evening is fantastic to see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how that all plays out. But the FIA Motorsport Games is well and truly underway now. We've had so much going on today, but let's take a look at what we've got for you tomorrow. We're on air from 9:45, and we've got plenty for you to see. We've got the karting endurance qualifying, the KCMG F4 qualifying race. That's going to be a good one. There's some good names in there for the F4 drivers. Then it's the GT Cup qualifying race 2 now. I can't wait to see that.
Today was good. I can imagine tomorrow it's going to get a little bit more heated out there. And they've got to keep the cars in good sort of condition for the final race, the big race. But you can see already no one's leaving anything on the table at the moment, so that's going to be a great race to watch tomorrow afternoon.
And one we haven't seen yet is the drifting. The drifting finals are happening tomorrow.
I know. I'm going to go and have a little look over there tomorrow in the morning, see how the practicing's going, but I don't actually understand all the rules, so I want someone to go through and explain how they get their points and how it all works out. But I'm really excited about seeing the drifting tomorrow afternoon. 32 cars going in through to the final, so that should be good fun.
That will be. We've got the cross car junior and senior semis and finals. The Fanatec esports finals are coming your way. That is such a popular discipline this year.
Yeah, it's got the most drivers in the category out of all the disciplines this year, so I think it's 58
nations
drivers
competing.
So that's going to be a very tight competition, I can imagine. And obviously that's towards the end of tomorrow, so there's plenty of practicing and qualifying before there for those guys, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
We saw Tom Coronel earlier, didn't we, when we went for lunch, and their touring car have got their qualifying tomorrow as well.
Tom was looking as relaxed as ever when we saw him. He knows what to do out on the track, and I'm sure he's going to be able to put in a great performance tomorrow afternoon in the qualifying session.
And, of course, the rally finals as well.
Yeah, great way to finish. I mean, it'll be finishing pretty much like today with the rallying and their last stages as well. So it was great just to have that ability to have them here on the circuit, not out in the countryside, the local countryside, but to have them here, enable the fans to get up close and tight with those cars, and for us who have been based at the circuit all day, just to be able to see those cars.
Yeah, so that's everything we've got for you tomorrow, but let's take a look at all the action and all the highlights of what's happened here today. We'll see you then tomorrow.
Hyde Park right now, trying to get around the outside of the BMW, carries a lot of mid-corner speed, he's room wide, he's going to get that forward mark, nice and simple.
He started behind, as I say, quite a big machine. Look at the roll on